All right, everyone, welcome to the Movie Changeup podcast. I'm your host, as normal, Joe Fricke. We're having a little bit of a different episode today. Normally, we're either battling against each other or assembling an ultimate list, whether it's to put something in the Hall of Fame or put something on a Mount Rushmore. But it's a little bit different today because
Oh,
we're just talking kind of various movies along the alphabet. That's why it's called our A through Z show. We're gonna list a movie that starts with A, talk about it, then a movie that starts with B, and on and on and on. And various letters. With my normal co-hosts, with Johnny, Bobby, and Tristan. Let's talk a little bit about the difficulty in compiling our list. We'll start with Johnny. Was there any thought process behind why you picked the movies you did?
you know, um, as champion, nothing is ever too difficult for me. But yeah, some of these, depending on what letter you were basically assigned randomly, it was easier to find some than others. Some of the categories, I took it as an opportunity to watch a movie maybe that I was on my watch list or something I'd never seen before, and be able to talk about that, or bring up a movie maybe we haven't mentioned much on the show and haven't really had conversations about. So those are the kind of movies that are on my list, either personal favorites that haven't been brought up or movies that I just recently watched since we um, came up with the idea for this episode.
All right, and before Tristan talk or before Bobby talks, I'd like to hear Tristan's thoughts. Tristan's talk now.
All right. Yeah,
Just in
my
time.
thoughts. I had thoughts. I thought I was gonna have a hard time getting this list together. A few of my letters were difficult, and you think like, oh god, how am I gonna find something for this or that? But once you get looking, I was kind of surprised. I didn't have every letter I had. There were at least like two or three or four even that I was like maybe that one, and I had a hard time picking what I went with. But yeah, my thought process was like, okay, have I not seen this? Is it one that out of breath? I had to run to get my Johnny Sucks T-shirt, but yeah, is it one I haven't seen? Is it one that I always meant to see? Or there's some here too where I've seen it, but there was never an excuse to talk about it. So now I'm like, okay, here's my 15 seconds to talk about how good this movie is or how bad it is. So I can't wait to get through. And I watched some of your guys' movies too, so I'm excited to talk about some of yours. I know Johnny had a good one that I want to talk about, and Joe did too. So I can't wait for that. Not you, Bobby. You sucked.
Yeah,
All
mine were
all
bad.
right, I will say I did not watch anyone else's movies, but I did because I have the letters Q and U, and there wasn't really anything that I've seen that stood out that I wanted to talk about. So I watched two movies for the first time that start with Q and U, and those will be my movies. But I mainly skipped Bobby because I didn't think Tristan would show up in time, and I just thought it would be funny. But now it's Bobby's turn. You may speak.
Yeah, so I went with a little like some of them. It was just kind of the first movie that came to my mind for the letter, and then I would look back on it and see if I wanted to change it. But I ended up picking a lot of movies that either were like formative for me when I was growing up, whether they're a good or bad movie. It's like something that I watched all the time and like got me interested in certain movies. Or it's just a movie that I think is underrated, that I enjoy, and just to pitch to a few more people to see it because I think it's been forgotten a little bit. So I think I went with some odd choices, but I think it'll be fun to talk about movies that we don't usually get a chance to talk about.
Yeah, I agree.
And
And
Joe is looking for something.
Well, it's like, yeah, you,
Yep.
you get all those moments.
all right,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
guys, you guys good?
We're ready, Joe. What's
Yeah.
our letter A?
All right, to start with the letter A, and sorry again for the internet connection. That just means more work for me when I upload this shit to YouTube, because I'll have to edit shit together, and that's always fun. I definitely have loads of free time. All right, our first movie we're starting with A is Almost Famous. It's a Cameron Crowe directed movie. It came out in a year, early 2000s, maybe late 90s. I don't know. Forgot to look it up because I was too busy reestablishing my internet connection.
Came
Uh,
out in 2000.
2000. There we go. That's late
2000.
90s, early 2000s. But yeah, directed by Cameron Crowe. Semi-autobiographical movie, kind of based on his time as a teen, following various rock bands around, including Leonard Skinner. Uh, I believe the main character is 15 years old in 1973, which is when the movie takes place. Follows the fictional band of Stillwater and kind of just follows this teenager's journey as he follows his rock band around. Really solid really good movie that I feel like is relatively underrated. If you're not like a massive movie fan, I feel like you really don't know what this movie is, and I feel like everyone should. I feel like it's the type of movie everyone should at least check out. It's a lot of comedians in this movie. Jimmy Fallon plays the manager for a little bit, kind of, and this was before he blew up. You have Mark Maron in there. Kate Hudson, a young Kate Hudson is Penny Lane. Then obviously for the band members, you have Jason Lee and Billy Crudup as the two main band leads. And this is kind of the movie that put Elton John a little bit back on the map as far as pop culture with the Tiny Dancer scene on the bus, which became pretty iconic at the time. But yeah, I'm a big fan of this movie. What are you guys' thoughts on it? Anyone else seen it?
Yeah, this was one that I feel like I was late on because I watched it in maybe like the last like 5 years probably, but obviously it had been out for a while and I've heard great things about it. Um, but yeah, once I checked it out, I really liked it. I've watched it since. It's very rewatchable. Every performance is great. Honestly, anything Billy Crudup is in, I'll enjoy. He's always good in it, even if the movie sucks. He's always good. But he's great in this, and the movie's good. And then shout out to I think his name is I always like to call him Patrick Fuckett, but it's like Fugit or
Fugit?
Fugit.
Yeah.
Fugit.
Yeah, yeah.
He hasn't really been in anything in a long time, but he's like basically the lead of this. He was also in another movie, a small movie called Wrist Cutters: A Love Story. That was like a very indie dark comedy of like a place where like a purgatory, basically people who kill themselves go. So I kind of just followed the path of actors I like to get to Almost Famous, and I enjoyed it. Very very enjoyable movie with good music in it.
Yeah, and there's mostly it's classic rock songs from that era, but you also have some original songs in there that were written by Peter Frampton and then Cameron Crowe's wife at the time, now ex-wife, who was a member of Heart. So you have some good music in there as well. And then one thing I wanted, and then Emily Deschanel is also in this movie as the main character's sister, as well as Frances McDormand. I just wanted to drop that. And then Anna Paquin is another one of the Band-Aids. So
Yeah.
I'll say that.
Yeah,
I was
young.
gonna say R.I.P. Cameron Crowe. Then I realized he's alive, and I was thinking of Gary Marshall. So
Philip
Yeah,
Seymour
there
Hoffman's in
you
the
go.
movie too. He
Yep.
also
Oh, yep,
Yep.
yep.
in great cast of people. I love this movie. It's probably my dad's favorite movie. I've seen it like tons and tons of times over the years of my childhood. So it's one that I know really well. You know, that Tiny Dancer scene, of course, is like the famous scene, but a lot of scenes in this kind of stick with me. And I really like the idea of a generational conflict. You mentioned Frances McDormand's character is the mom of the main character, and she's very conservative, very afraid of her son going out there on the trip with this band, and he's like kind of the youth and revolt of the family. And I think it captures that. You mentioned like late '90s, early 2000s, like that clash of the generations, the clash of the centuries, you know, and the changing of the optimism of the '90s into the 2000s. I think it's a really great movie to watch. So I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it, and if you have, the cast did a reunion on YouTube during the quarantine. So if you want to see them all grown up, talking about their experiences on YouTube, I think Entertainment Weekly did that. I'm not sure, but yeah, you can find that on YouTube too.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, also it's currently streaming on Paramount Plus. So if you have Paramount Plus, you can watch it for free there. And it's about a 15-year-old in 1973. So if you know anyone that was 15 in 1973, then maybe
Yeah.
a nice way to reconnect with your childhood mother who was born in 1958. So uh, if anyone has anything else to say, I think that takes us to Johnny with the letter
Yeah.
B.
I'll just say really
Yeah,
quick that is a good.
Oh yeah,
Yep,
go
Bobby.
for it.
I was just, as someone just really quick who plays music and stuff, it's definitely like it's a really great movie, and if you're into rock music at all, it's a lot of fun. But it's also a good Cameron Crowe movie where he doesn't cast an American playing uh, like a white person as a Hawaiian, so that's always also good.
Yeah.
Good place.
Yeah,
Yeah. So transitioning from a movie that is pretty universally loved, and we all have pretty similar thoughts on it. For my B, I went with Birds of Prey, or the the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which is the full title. I went with this because I'd never seen it before, and then recently, obviously, the Suicide Squad came out. I enjoyed that, so I was like, well, I'll check out Birds of Prey now that I saw the Suicide Squad. I think it has strong elements overall. I don't think it's the strongest movie, but I think Kathy Yan does a good job directing, and I think Margot Robbie does a great job with the character. All the side characters fell flat to me for the most part, except for Ewan McGregor. I think did a great job. I wish he had a little more to do. I was super disappointed I was excited that Victor Zsasz was in it, and then I was very disappointed in his portrayal. I thought he was a very weak character. And then my other thing with it is Harley Quinn is a side character, and we need to stick to that. I can't watch a whole movie of that. That was a lot for me. I don't know. Margot Robbie's great as the character, but even in the show, like Batman the Animated Series, going back to it, Harley Quinn is meant to be this kind of obnoxious side character that's fun, but like is never supposed to lead a movie. So I'd be okay with her being in more Suicide Squad movies, but I don't need another Harley Quinn led film. So I kind of wanted to just bring it up and see, because we haven't really talked about it. I want to see what everyone kind of thought about it, because I'm pretty sure all of us have seen it now. So yeah. I guess we'll just go around the box. Bobby, what did you think of it?
So it's one, when I saw it in theaters first, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun movie that was kind of messy. Like it had like you said, a lot of really good elements, but I think the plot, because they were trying to be in Harley Quinn's head, jumped around, and a lot of the Birds of Prey themselves they just didn't do a lot with them. I liked the actresses in the roles, but they just didn't give them anything to do.
I agree.
But I thought the action, seeing like the R-rated action worked at times, and Harley Quinn, obviously, like Margot Robbie's great. She works as a main lead character in the Harley Quinn animated show that's out now, but that's also, again, it's animated, and it's more of an ensemble, cast of characters coming through. So I think that's where she fits best. But I think it's a messy movie with good elements, and I really do like Ewan McGregor in it as the villain. Like Black Mask is, at least he makes a character that could have been really bland the way he's written fun to watch.
Yeah,
I think it's okay. It's an okay movie.
Yeah, I thought it was, I think if I had seen it before the Suicide Squad, the new one, I would have been down on it. And I feel like having seen that, knowing where it went after this, it kind of puts it in perspective to me, and I liked it a little more than I probably would have if I saw it like at the time it came out. Tristan, what do you think of it?
I'm a bit more positive than you guys are. I still think it's not great. I think the story doesn't really hold together. I think all the side characters are pretty much useless, especially when you're coming out of such interesting source material. And the Birds of Prey and how they interact with Harley Quinn and that whole team dynamic is really fascinating in the comics. And this feels almost like one of those early 2000s comic book movies where they're like, we don't really know what to do with these characters, so we're just going to like kind of take the names and some stuff about them and throw them together. And that kind of is what this feels like. I like the style. I think the look of it is really interesting. I liked being able to see Gotham brighter and by day, and it looked different. Like when you see Batman's POV of Gotham, it's very dark, it's very dreary, it's all shadows and really literally drawn on black if you're looking at the Batman animated series. And Gotham is much more bright, much more colorful, very like sunny. You're seeing like the day-to-day lives of these characters. So I thought that was interesting about it, but I didn't think that it was necessarily great. And the new Suicide Squad came out and essentially did all this better. Like it did the really stylish action, did like the character POV stuff really well. And this, I think, is going to be useful as like a transitional movie between the first Suicide Squad and now this new Suicide Squad. It's like, okay, we have this one movie to kind of like bridge us stylistically between these three movies, but otherwise it's just been done better now. So if you want to see this kind of a movie, just check out Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad, not the original.
Not the original.
You can skip that one.
Yeah. For the most part, I agree with all you guys. My take on it after watching it is I felt like there was a good Birds of Prey in their movie somewhere, and there was a good Harley Quinn movie in there somewhere, and they basically combined these two movies into one movie, and I just don't think it worked together well at all. I think I would have rather had just seen a Birds of Prey movie and had just seen like a Harley Quinn movie. I felt like them coming together I wasn't a big fan of. At least in the story they tried to tell. I feel like there is a way to make that movie, but this wasn't it.
Yeah, I thought just going into it, I thought more of the movie would actually be Birds of Prey because it's titled that, but until the third act, they don't even come together. So I was surprised that it took so long for it to get to that point. And you're right, it did feel much more like a Harley Quinn movie, and then they kind of just threw in Birds of Prey at the end because they maybe wanted to have some sort of, other name behind it. But yeah, I think we pretty much have said everything that needs to be said. But yeah, again, Ewan McGregor is good. I liked his death. I like some of the elements of it, but yeah, overall, like when the second character you focus on for most of the movie is whatever Renee Montoya or whatever, she fell so flat to me of all the side characters, and the movie focused way too much time on her. I was like, anytime, like even though I don't love like the whole Harley Quinn thing, like focusing on that. Every time it was focused on like the police drama or whatever, I was like, get back to characters I actually care about. Show me Ewan McGregor. Like, I don't care about any of this.
Yep.
But I thought the stuff with some of the characters that I liked were pretty good. So I don't know. I think I did put this on the list. I will dive more into Kathy Yan, I believe, soon. But I definitely check this out because I was interested in her work too after seeing another movie she did.
Yeah.
So that leads us to
And
C, correct?
I will say, if you loved our glowing review of Birds of Prey, it is free to watch on HBO Max, I believe. So
I think it's worth a watch if you like superhero movies.
You can do worse things with like 2 hours of your night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, C.
All right. So for C, I went with one that growing up was definitely a favorite as a sports comedy, and one that I think has kind of faded from the mainstream in the past little while, where we are kind of that borderline age that probably grew up with our parents loving it and showing it to us and it playing on TV. And I haven't really seen it as much, and that's Caddyshack, the classic golf comedy from 1980. Harold Ramis, Egon, as everyone would know him from Ghostbusters, directed this. Stars Chevy Chase, Roddy Dangerfield, Ted Knight, Michael O'Keefe, and of course Bill Murray. This is one that just I think needs to keep getting shown to people as it's one of the best sports comedies of all time. It's been quoted over and over. Bill Murray with the gopher in that movie is definitely classic. Rodney Dangerfield just playing this crazy, golfer and all that. But it's definitely one, like I said, I just kind of want to bring it back up because it's one that we love, at least I know I do, and a lot of people my age. And then when I talk to people that are younger, they don't really know what it is at all. It didn't really stick around as much. It's one of, I think, as a side performance by Bill Murray, one of his best side character roles. It's just this goofy guy chasing the gopher the whole time. Praising the Dalai Lama and all that stuff, weird, crazy stuff that he does in that movie. But what are your guys' thoughts? I mean, it's a classic movie to me. Did you guys grow up on it? I know Tristan and Joe. What are your thoughts?
I didn't grow up on it. My dad watched it a lot, but it was one that I just kind of had on the back burner for a while, and eventually I did get to it. And I think that Bill Murray scenes are all fantastic. I think all of his, literally, almost every line he delivers is ridiculous, and you have that sort of meta thing of the director didn't want to be doing what he was doing, and he was having all these problems on set. So you have this like artistic clash of the actor and the director having two different ideas of what the movie actually is. But I honestly feel like the whole cast has different ideas of what movie they're in, and like the editor doesn't know what movie this is. It's like a whole bunch of different. It's like this really meandering kind of plot following these characters. So I thought it was really interesting the way it kind of, in a way, fits into that sort of dazed and confused genre of like summer movies that are just kind of like wandering through life. You don't really know what you're doing, and the movie reflects that with like the disjointedness of all the scenes and nothing really kind of flowing together as a plot. But yeah, not one that I would necessarily loved, but I thought it was interesting. I think the Bill Murray scenes are all great, but the rest of the cast I think just kind of is there. They don't necessarily provide the memorable, quotable lines that Bill Murray does. And I watched this one just a couple of days ago, rewatched it, and I feel the same way. Bill Murray shines, the rest of it is just kind of there.
Yeah, I'll say I disagree a little bit with that much. I think Rodney Dangerfield and Chevy Chase both have some great lines throughout the movie, and I mostly grew up on it. I think I found it a little bit later. I mean, not super late, but I think I was like 14 or 15 the first time I watched it. And one of my favorite movie facts of all time is when because I watched like a 2-hour documentary about the making of the movie, when they wanted to blow up the golf course at the end, but the owners of the golf course where they were filming said no, like, we don't want you to mess up our golf course. So as a thank you, all of the producers took the owners and employees of the golf course out to lunch or dinner or something, and then while they were all out to dinner and weren't on the golf course anymore, that's when they filmed the scene of blowing up the golf course because I really like the movie a lot. A lot of quotable moments, and one of the things they said too in the documentary is the movie, like the script was originally supposed to be like a coming of age story of the Danny Noonan character, and that's basically what like everything they filmed, but in editing that main storyline that they had wasn't really working at all, like it just didn't fit. And so they basically just took that out and kept everything else, which is why you just have a bunch of weird nonsense scenes that don't go together. But it's like each individual scene is great, but if you actually look at it, it's like a full movie trying to tell any kind of a story. It doesn't. Like people say, oh, it's the story of like these lowly like people playing golf against like these rich elites, and that doesn't even come into play as like an idea in the movie until the last like 5 minutes.
Right. It's definitely a movie that I kind of take it as it's like a snapshot of these weird
Yeah,
people that
yeah.
you're just seeing what they're doing that day or like that time, and like this little mini story for each of them. And I still really love it, but it definitely, the plot is nonsensical.
Yeah,
There's like
there is no plot, but it's still somehow great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw Caddyshack when I was probably way too young to see it. I was at a friend's house that, his dad was like, "Oh, you guys haven't seen Caddyshack. You guys got to watch Caddyshack." And I don't think the dad remembered how inappropriate some moments were. Like a woman being topless in the pool and things like that. That was an eye-opening moment as probably a 10-year-old or however old I was at the time when I saw it. But it is one that I've grown to appreciate more just getting older and watching. I think it's a very good movie. I think it's a good timepiece of the 80s, and you have all these guys coming from SNL because it very much is. It does feel I kind of in the middle of where Tristan and Joe are plot wise, but it's like they had a bunch of ideas for skits, and then they made a plot kind of, basically intersecting between those skits. But every scene I think is really good as a narrative story. It doesn't really matter.
No.
And that's like a good look at kind of like 80s comedies, a lot of some of those early movies, and you get a lot of that in like, you get a little more structured stories in like Vacation and Meatballs and stuff like that, but this is very much that same era, and it holds up. I love Rodney Dangerfield in this, and he does have some great lines. When he's talking about the pants, and then he goes, "Oh, but they look great on you," and then does the look like that. That's one of my favorite scenes, and that's such a quotable moment. And then obviously everything Bill Murray does in it is great. So I think you have a lot to love here. I would definitely check it out. It's not as narrative of a story as like a Happy Gilmore, but if you like Happy Gilmore and you grew up on that and you've never seen Caddyshack, I definitely recommend Caddyshack. And I'm interested if at some point this maybe pops up in next week's episode. Spoiler: we're doing a draft, and this could fall into a couple different categories, and I'm interested to see maybe if this one sneaks in there. So it might pop up, but. Other than that, yeah, Caddyshack, I grew up on it, and I still love it to this day. I have a copy of it. But yeah, it's kind of like, my Almost Famous. Everyone pretty much universally likes this movie if they've seen it, but if you haven't seen it, check it out because it's obviously a little older.
Yeah. And it is on Hulu right now if you want to check it out.
Oh yeah, so that brings us to Tristan.
All right, Tristan, give us the D.
All right, we mentioned that we're gonna be talking about Kathy Ann again this episode, and here's the chance. My D is Dead Pigs. It was Kathy Ann. It was her debut feature, but because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, it ended up being delayed and released after Birds of Prey. So it's the second one that's been released, but it was made before Birds of Prey. It's released on Movie. It's a streaming platform you can sign up through on Amazon or just go to movie.com. They're a platform that goes out of the way to kind of give platform and give precedent to streaming indie movies, and especially foreign indie movies. So if you want to get out of like the monotony of scrolling through Netflix and seeing the same like blockbusters you've gotten tired of seeing, this is one that I recommend checking out. It's pretty cheap, and you can get the first 3 months for $1. And anyway, Dead Pigs was her debut feature, her second release, and it follows this interconnecting story of all of these people throughout modern day Hong Kong. You follow a stylist, you follow an architect, those kind of like people who otherwise would not be interacting in any way, and you see how their lives slowly start to interact because of this chance situation where tons of dead pigs start showing up. And it's based off of a real event where there was a river where a bunch of dead pig bodies were found in the river, and no one in the town could figure out where all these dead pigs came from, and they started trying to uncover the events of all these people in this small town. And this is kind of an escalation of that. It takes place across Hong Kong. It's similar to Birds of Prey in that it's slightly elevated. It's like a slightly elevated reality. It's a little bit colorful, a little bit larger than life, but not nearly as large as Birds of Prey is. But you can see the beginnings of Kathy Ann's direction in this movie. I think it's a much better movie than Birds of Prey. It has a lot more to say. I think it's a lot more interestingly shot and holds together a lot more. So if you want to see her actually pull off a good one, I'd check out Dead Pigs.
Yeah, I think Bobby and Joe, have you seen this?
I didn't even know what this movie was. I was just like, oh, I guess Tristan's doing a movie
Yeah.
called Deadpix.
I knew it was. I just heard of the title because of it being the same director, but I didn't know. I've never seen it. I don't really know anything about it.
I thought maybe
Yeah,
it's the
it's one.
sequel to Pig, the Nicolas Cage movie.
Prequel.
No, definitely, yeah, pig themed episode here we got. But yeah, I think it's a brilliant satire on capitalism and the Chinese government and how their society is, but it also, relates very much to what's, in the U.S. and capitalism and alienating people and making people desperate. And while it is a good satire and there's a lot of funny moments, it does have some serious moments, and I think it's directed well for such a movie that stylistically changes so often. I think it does that much better in this movie than Birds of Prey. That one felt a little jarring when it jumped scene to scene, and this one, no matter what the tone is, it kind of seamlessly goes through that. So I like Kathy on a lot. I understand that. Seeing this movie and picking her for your movie, I think works. The other thing with it is Vivian Wu, who was in, some might remember her in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in the 90s, was in that in a small role, and she was when she was like very young. No, it's the one after that, probably a straight to DVD movie. But then she was also in The Last Emperor, and then she's obviously much older in this, and she steals the show. She's amazing in it. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very good movie, but it does have a few parts that might take you out of it. There's a part where they all kind of break out in a song that maybe doesn't fit with the rest as well as some of the other scenes. But I think overall it's pretty funny. It's well directed, and I'm interested to see more of her work. If I'd only seen Birds of Prey, I wouldn't have thought much about the directing, but I saw Dead Pigs before I saw Birds of Prey, and that was one of the reasons I was interested in even checking that out. So I recommend it. It's a foreign film, but a lot of the movie's in English. So if you want a good movie to kind of transition you to watching a movie in full subtitles, check this one out. And it's a good kind of, in between of that.
Yeah, and it's very high energy too throughout most of it. So a lot of times you think of foreign films, you think it's going to be very slow and very dry, and the plot's going to take forever. And this one is not the plot does take its time to bring the characters together. That's kind of just the premise of the movie. But yeah, the pacing is very quick. It's quippy and it's kind of fun to watch. So you're not getting a dry. I definitely recommend it as a transition into watching foreign film, or even just a transition into watching stuff that's more indie. If you're used to watching superhero stuff and you want to get, here's that Birds of Prey director who did something a bit more off the rail, off the grid type thing. This could be a perfect way to get you there.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right. Well, that I think that brings us to everything we need to say about that. And that brings us back to you, Joe.
All right. So if you've paid attention in kindergarten, I have the letter E and I chose The Elephant Man, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime as well as Paramount Plus. If you don't know what it is, it's the story of John Merrick. I think they renamed him Joseph Merrick in the movie, or the other way around. But either way, his name's wrong in the movie. But he suffers from some disease that they didn't really know much about at the time, and it just makes him super deformed. And it's a period piece. It's like the mid to late 1800s. Travels around a circus until a doctor played by Anthony Hopkins discovers him and kind of showcases him and shows him to various doctors. And a lot of the themes it deals with is Anthony Hopkins' character really any different than the circus owner? They're both parading him around and not really treating him all that well, and not really caring about him as a person, just caring about his illness or his disease or what makes him different more than him as a person. And then it kind of all culminates at the end with Merrick, played by John Hurt, who yells into a group of people who are chasing him and wanting to see him, I'm not an elephant, I'm not an animal, I'm a human being. And then the movie kind of, for the most part, ends from there. You get a little blurb that he died not too long after that at the age of 27. Spoiler alert, but it's also, you could kind of figure that out just by watching the movie. But directed by David Lynch. Surprisingly enough, there is a David Lynch movie I like. If you've watched our podcast that much, you'd probably figure out David Lynch movies not my vibe. But for the most part, this movie's a little weird and odd for the first 2 minutes, and then it's a little weird again for about the last 2 minutes. But outside of that, it's pretty normal, straightforward movie. David Lynch shot it in black and white, and it was also produced by Mel Brooks, who on purpose kept his name off the the posters and everything because he didn't want anyone to think it was like a normal kind of Mel Brooks type comedy. And then just a little fun fact: there's a boy who kind of goes around with the circus owner, and he's played by Dexter Fletcher, who went on to direct Eddie the Eagle as well as Rocket Man. So, it's my little blurb about that movie. I don't know. I know Tristan's seen it. I don't know if anyone else here has seen it.
I have, but it's been a long time. I don't remember a ton from it outside of the famous end scene that you already mentioned. But yeah, I will say this is one, like I mentioned with Dead Pigs being like a transition to foreign films. This is kind of a transition into David Lynch films if you want to get kind of weird with it. This is his like most straightforward movie that I've seen him do as far as just like telling a complete story that doesn't keep you guessing at every turn. But you still get some of his style, like Joe mentioned. So if you want to kind of get into David Lynch, but you've never really checked him out, I think Elephant Man is like the perfect like first David Lynch movie to watch, and then go into some of his other works because things are a bit stranger after that. Like I would say watch this before you watch Mulholland Drive, and you'll kind of get you'll kind of understand Mulholland Drive a little better after you've seen Elephant Man or some of his other stuff.
Especially Eraserhead, that movie I still keeps me up at night. And I watched that movie like 10 years ago. Once. I ain't watching that shit
could
again.
also have been an E.
Yeah, I still ain't never watching that. I would have had to rewatch it to be able to talk about it, just like I had to rewatch Elephant Man, but I'm never rewatching Eraserhead. Fuck that movie.
Yeah.
Speaking of Eraserhead, I mentioned when I watched a double featured Eraserhead and Elephant Man last night, but I want to get Bobby's thoughts before I get to mine. I want to skip you.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna say, similar to Johnny, it's been a while. It was the first David Lynch film I had ever seen, so it definitely did like kind of ease me into that because it is more of a like it's telling its own story. It's a historical kind of piece, but I just want to say that the prosthetics and makeup still really hold up, and it looks fantastic, like on the Elephant Man himself. So just if you're interested in that at all, just go watch it. But it's definitely a more straightforward movie for David Lynch, and I'd say give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big David Lynch fan. I like his weirder stuff. I like his more abstract stuff. Twin Peaks is one of my favorite shows. His Twin Peaks movies are one of my favorite movies. I love Mulholland Drive. I like when he gets very weird and abstract with his form. And this is not that at all. So it was one that I put off for a while. People had always said, oh, it's very straightforward Lynch. It's not his art house kind of stuff that you're used to. It's very, very streamlined. And I put it off, in fact, until literally yesterday. And I was like, well, it's one of the handful of Lynch I haven't seen, and we're going to talk about it tomorrow, so what's a better excuse than to watch it now? And I was blown away by it. It has some of his abstracty stuff, like Joe mentioned in the beginning, was kind of Lynchian. The ending is a bit Lynchian. There's a dream sequence in the middle that's, of course, Lynchian, but there's even scenes, like there's this scene where he's kind of tormented by these people, and the way they're shot is very much how Lynch shoots, like nightmare sequences. So there's scenes throughout of that feel nightmarish, even though they're not technically nightmare scenes. It feels like a Lynch movie in that way. And I thought the performances were incredible. I thought the themes are really powerful too. That was what really hit me. Just this man who's spent his entire life not just cut off from society, but like attacked by society, denied by society, not just put to the sideline, but shunned completely. And I thought that was to see him still have like an element of hope and to still see through the light and still keep moving, trying to be a good person, trying to improve the lives of people around him. It was very powerful thing to see. And of course, the ending scene is the thing that everybody knows. It's I'm not an elephant, I'm not an animal, I'm a human being. And you get that desperation throughout the entire movie building up to that moment. And you think like this guy's ready to break. There's so much going wrong in his life. So many people are so terrible to him. And then finally there's that moment he's like, I just want you to acknowledge me as a human being. Just acknowledge me as existing. And I thought that was really powerful too. We don't want to spoil him, but I guess it's a true story. So he dies, and I thought he died at the end. The way I read the final scene was that was his death scene. So he definitely you get the final text that he died, but I honestly read the final scene as his death scene. So yeah, I thought it was a great movie. I definitely recommend it as an intro to Lynch. But if you're like me and you like Lynch's more abstract stuff, and you kind of put this one off thinking it's going to be like a straight story or something very, very literal like that, it's not quite that literal. You're going to get a lot out of it still, so I recommend it for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, if it's free on Prime and Paramount Plus right now if you want to check it out. So, I believe that takes us to Johnny and F.
I'm very excited for this one. So F brings us to another movie that I think Tristan and I have only seen but that is a movie that just came out on Hulu called False Positive, starring Pierce Brosnan, Justin Theroux, and Alana Glazer. Um, I watched this basically because Pierce Brosnan, anything with him in it, I'll just check out randomly. You throw a Bond actor in there, I'm down for it. I don't know what the fuck to think of this movie. It was either the worst movie I've ever seen, or it was some like really good psychological thriller that was done very well, and maybe it was over my head. But I don't think so. I don't know. It's about a woman who's trying to get pregnant. Her and her husband, Alana Glazer is the lead, and her husband Justin Theroux go to Pierce Brosnan, who's a doctor, of basically saying like, "Hey, we've been trying for years, and I can't get pregnant." And he promises that he can get her pregnant. So they go through like this whole weird trial. She gets pregnant, and then basically the whole rest of the movie is people saying "mommy brain" to her, and it's fucking like absurd how many times that is said, and it makes me want to punch someone. But yeah, I basically all I can say about it. I found a review on Letterboxd that sums up everything that I kind of thought about it, and it's by a guy named Colin Andrews, and this is his full review. Holy shit, this movie is so all over the place. Is it a horror, a thriller, a drama? I don't know. Is it pro-feminist? Does it set back the feminist movement several decades by saying that the one thing a woman should be wholly good at is giving birth? I don't know. Was Alana Glazer directed to have the same expression on her face the entire time? Is she just a bad dramatic actress? I don't know. Did this movie serve any purpose at all? I don't fucking know. Pierce Brosnan looked pretty fucking hot, though. And that's basically what I thought about it, too. Pierce Brosnan's a good-looking older man. But, yeah, I don't know what any of this... None of it made sense to me. It was terrible, but, like, maybe it was supposed to be. Like, I don't know if they went for a serious movie and just messed that up, or if they were going for what they made. And if they were, they did a good job of it. But I just don't know the intentions of anything. So I want to see what Tristan thought of this, as I think the only other person that bothered checking this out.
Yeah, this was one that was like slightly on my radar as a horror person. I heard about it and I've seen it come up on Hulu, and it was one that I was like, maybe one day I'll watch it. And then you mentioned it as your F, so I was like, screw it, I'll check it out. I've been kind of on the list, and wow, I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know what the premise was. I was like, oh, Pierce Brosnan, he plays like a doctor guy or something. So I just hit play, and then yeah, it just gets like if it's essentially, at least for the first like 70% of it, a Rosemary's Baby ripoff where she's going and seeing this experimental doctor, and she doesn't quite trust him. She doesn't quite trust her husband. She's not quite sure if she can trust anybody around her. And Johnny mentioned the baby brain line, and that's the type of thing. Like she meets other women who are pregnant, and she's expressing her concerns, and she's saying like, "Oh, I don't know if I trust my doctor. I don't know if I do this or that." And they kind of dismiss her. They're like, "Oh, it's probably just mommy brain. You know, you're just not thinking straight." So it's pretty much right out of Rosemary's Baby. They're trying to gaslight her into thinking like, "Oh, nothing's going wrong here. Nothing's bad here." So there's elements of commentary there. Like I think there's elements of like, especially because Pierce Brosnan and Justin Theroux are the people making the decisions, and they're like the men in her life who are the ones making the choices for her. So I think there's a lot there about female empowerment and about making choices for yourself, and obviously the element of getting pregnant and your body choices is something that's in the current political news. So I think they're trying to talk about that. So there's elements that they're trying to talk about here. And like for the first half, I was like, Johnny gives like a 1 out of 5. I don't really know why. It's a cheap Rosemary's Baby ripoff that doesn't quite pick up on the same chills as the rest of it. And then the second half or so it just goes so off the rails crazy. And I could not believe what I was watching. And then every scene afterwards just goes up and up and up. And you're like, surely this movie's over. And then it's like, no, we have another ridiculous thing we're going to pull out here. And by the end, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And I was more positive than Johnny was, because I think I could tell they were trying to do something here. And I don't know if they quite struck what they were going for, but I thought it was very interesting to watch. And especially, I don't want to get too into the ending, because I think it's one that I would actually recommend you watch, believe it or not, because even though me and Johnny didn't love it, I think it's an entertaining movie to watch, and one that you might end up getting a lot out of more than us. But yeah, there's element to it where it's like they're they're exploring a theme that I don't necessarily agree with. Like the theme of the movie might not be one that suits my political beliefs, but it was still expressed well, and I think I liked it a bit more than I thought I did when I first watched it. Talking about it now, but yeah, I'd actually recommend False Positive if you want to check out something weird, something that might give you a strange viewing experience. Maybe if you're in a state or a place where you can buy yourself a little bit of illegal substance or a couple of drinks, and you might end up getting a lot more of it than even I did.
Yeah, that might help. I did watch this sober with my fiance, and we were just very confused. So, with that being said, anyone who is interested in seeing it after a recommendation, skip ahead a little bit because I'm about to spoil the ending. Just for Bobby and Joe. So, you have this whole movie where Pierce Brosnan and Justin Theroux, they go way back. They were doctors together, and like, oh, we should have opened up. We should have been partners. Blah blah blah. At some point in the movie, you see a scene where Alana Glazer walks in a room and Pierce Brosnan is giving Justin Theroux a blowjob, but then it's a dream sequence, of course, so it's not real. But then the rest of the movie, she thinks maybe they're having a relationship. Everyone's against me. Everyone just keeps saying you have mommy brain, mommy brain. Literally every fucking person she talks to uses that. And then the reveal at the end of the movie is that Pierce Brosnan is getting people pregnant in his practice, which Justin Theroux's character, assigned to be partners with him at his practice, planned this whole thing. There's a lot more going into it, but basically there's like 18 twists, but the one main twist that stood out was Pierce Brosnan is injecting his own semen into all of these patients, and he's got this whole cabinet full of his own semen, and that's how he's getting people pregnant, because he's got super sperm.
So that's semi-based on an actual thing that happened. Like, but it's like that's a weird way to do.
It all leads to that, and then the movie ends with Alana Glazer's nipple and a CGI dead fetus open its mouth to start sucking on the nipple.
Because there's this element where she's pregnant with 3 kids, and they're not quite sure she's going to be able to give birth to all 3 for some like medical reasons. So they're like, "Oh, you're probably going to have to abort either the 2 boys or the 1 girl."
Boys or the 1 girl.
And she's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to have a girl, so I'm going to keep the girl." But then, of course, the men are like, "But men good," and they want to keep the 2 guys. And there's like the element to the commentary of like, "Oh, they're pro-choice in theory, but they're trying to make the choice for her." And I thought that was the most interesting part of the thing, was this element of like, what is choice, and she wants to keep the daughter, but they end up aborting the daughter instead. So she goes back, and the fetus that she's milking at the end is like the aborted fetus of what would have been her daughter, because against her knowledge, Justin Theroux decided to abort the daughter and keep the sons.
Wow. This movie is so wild. Yeah, I don't know. I recommend it. Like, if you stuck through it, even if you know the spoilers, you won't believe what you're seeing. But this movie is fucking weird. I was just like, oh, I need to talk about it. As soon as I watched it, I was like, well, I have F. We're going to talk about it. And I was glad at least Tristan also watched it. But yeah, it's wild. So I recommend it if you just want something fucking insane to watch for a little less than 2 hours. But that was probably maybe our longest discussion we will have.
I figured we'd average, like, if we want to be on pace for under 2 minutes, 2 hours, we'd probably speed it up, because we're supposed to do roughly like 4 minutes per movie, and we're doing about 8 minutes per movie. So
perfect. Well, the next one should be quick. Bobby, what's your G movie?
Yeah, what movie did you?
It's awesome that we're
transitioning
from that movie to a truly fantastic movie, and that is 1998's Roland Emmerich classic Godzilla, the Americanized version of that. So this is a movie I definitely picked because Johnny and I both grew up watching this. Like, I don't know how many times we saw it, because it was one of our, like, what we called our car movies on all our road trips. We would put it in all the time and watch it. And we grew up loving the old school movies, like, Godzilla versus all the other different monsters and all that. And so they were finally doing this American big budget movie. I went to see it in theaters, and I would have been 7. So as a 7-year-old, this was like, oh my God, it's Godzilla on the big screen, because I'd only seen it on TV. And it did. I loved this as a kid. And what I really want to talk about is this is a movie that kind of kept me interested in movies and in the genre of like the monster kind of world. And looking back, it's a terrible movie. It doesn't make sense. It's not, the story is bad. Godzilla, as a big giant creature, can somehow disappear in 2 seconds, and they don't know where he went in a city, and things like
Stealth
that.
mode,
And
dog.
yeah, it's not a good movie. John Renault is like the only good like acting part in it. But what I want to get, because you don't really need to tell me what you think about the movie. I think it's bad, but is there a movie like that as a kid got you interested in a genre or kept you interested in a genre of movies that looking back it's bad, but you're glad you watched it when you were younger?
Ooh. I would say
So if
probably
anyone
the
has one.
Tim Burton, not even like Tim Burton, but like Batman and Robin and like Batman Forever. Probably without those movies, I don't know if I have the same like love for Batman and like the superhero genre that I do now.
Cool.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, this Godzilla movie we saw because we loved Godzilla, like the actual Japanese Godzilla movies, because we used to rent them from Blockbuster. So we checked this out. We liked it at the time because we were dumb kids. But the only thing the good thing this movie gave us was the actual Japanese Godzilla killing this Godzilla in a version in a later movie that they did. But yeah, I'll say the closest thing I have to that of like a movie that sucks, but I grew up loving it, and it kind of got me into a wider thing would have been Space Jam. I never would have cared about the Looney Tunes if it wasn't for Space Jam, and that movie is terrible, but I love it because I saw it when I was a kid, and I watched more Looney Tunes stuff because of that. It wasn't like the other way around. I knew about Space Jam, and then that got me into the Looney Tunes rather than I knew Looney Tunes that got me into Space Jam. So I'd say that's probably the closest example I'd have to that. Because I didn't go read Moby Dick after I saw
Page Master.
The only steelbook I own, Space Jam.
Nice.
For me, it's probably a horror movie. I know I watched a lot of like Final Destination and Saw and those kind of like early 2000s horror movies that came out. Paranormal Activity is one for me where I watched that like a ton. I was actually a kid when those came out, but I was in like the blooming cinephile era. Like when I was in high school was when I first started to discover like loving movies, and those were the ones that really got like I never watch horror movies, and I watched Paranormal Activity, and I was like, oh, I can't get enough of these horror movies now. So that's probably one for me. I wouldn't say it was bad, but not a great movie looking back.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I had more I was going to talk about with this movie just because there's so many bad like elements to it, but really that was the more interesting discussion to me, is that's why I put it on the list.
Yeah.
And the
so I'm
Scooby-Doo
pretty much
movies,
good
I
with
watched
this
those a
one.
lot when I was a kid. I still think those are good.
Yeah.
I'll stand by those.
There's some good behind the scenes stories about, especially that first one. If anyone wants to look into that stuff with James Gunn writing that script.
Yeah, it was supposed to be an R-rated movie.
Yeah. Until filming.
Yeah. Well, and they still filmed a lot of it, but
they did.
They got cut out.
Yeah.
All right, Tristan, you ready for H?
At H, it's one that I would imagine none of you guys have seen. It's kind of a deep cut documentary pick that I had called Hail Satan with a question mark at the end. Hail Satan? Maybe? I don't know. Came out in 2019. It's on Hulu if you want to watch it. It's an indie documentary. Speaking of Almost Famous, the director's name is actually Penny Lane. Thought that was interesting. I was like, what a bizarre connection there. But this is essentially a profile of the founder of the Satanic Temple and his political activism. If you've heard the story, I believe I want to say Arkansas State Capitol, there was this statue of the Ten Commandments, and then the Satanic Temple said, oh, if you're going to make a statue to the Ten Commandments, you guys got to make a statue to our religious belief too. So they demanded a Statute of Baphomot. And it's just, and you go into this as like this is going to be a profile of the Satanic Temple, and as you're watching it, it turns itself into more of a examination of the church and state and how the United States kind of prioritizes theistic religions and Christianity, and yet when these outsider religions try to come in and demand the same rights that we give Christianity in this country, they're not given them, and they're kind of dismissed by society and treated as like crazy people. And yet when Christians want to have a big monument to their beliefs, or they want to have a whole day off or 2 days off or a week off to celebrate their beliefs, that's perfectly reasonable. So I think it got really into that political question there. I thought that was definitely very interesting. And of course the question, when you're profiling the Satanic Temple, you're like, okay, why would you become a Satanist? What even is a Satanist? And they kind of changed that look for me. And so many of these people are not even believers in Satan as much as they're just like atheists who wanted to be a part of a group.
Yeah, pretty much.
atheism doesn't necessarily have like an organization behind it. It does, but they're not active. They're not like politically engaged as much as the temple is. So it was a really interesting look at a group that is often like socially uh, profiled as one thing that isn't necessarily that, and that also looked at a really compelling modern day political question about why we prioritize certain religions over others in a country that should be a separation of church and state and not playing favorites. So I think if you want to get a
Yeah,
political
I'll
look and
say
also entertaining characters, Hail Satan's a good watch.
this one is one that's been on my watch list. I've seen the trailer a few times, but I've never fully checked it out. I was trying to before this, but just didn't have the time. So I will definitely check out on Tristan's recommendation. I never knew until Tristan kind of started talking if this was a documentary, like an actual one, or a mockumentary with fake characters. But knowing it's a documentary and going into those things. But yeah, the false idea in this country, that separation of church and state, that made up thing, it really should be called separation of any religion that's not Catholicism and state, is pretty much how the country works. So I'm interested in a movie that kind of takes that down a little bit. That's in my sight lines for sure. So I'm gonna check this one out, and I recommend it to people for sure. Just seeing the trailer looks good.
Yeah, I haven't seen the trailer, but just based on Tristan's description, it definitely sounds like in my wheelhouse of things I'd watch. So
Yeah, same here. It sounds interesting. I'll give it a shot.
yeah, for sure. All right, we ready to
All
move
right.
on to I?
Yeah.
All right, next we got I, and that is my pick. And it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, and I decided on the foreign film I Saw the Devil, which is currently, I guess, on Pluto TV and Crackle. I don't know what the fuck Pluto TV is. I don't think anyone has it. And I tried to watch Crackle one time. That streaming service is garbage.
You didn't go with I, Frankenstein?
Yeah, definitely not. Did I put it back?
Pluto is free, so if you guys want to watch it for free, it's on Pluto TV.
Oh, well. Oh, that's
I think
not it.
Crackle's also free.
I
I
don't know.
don't remember.
I don't know where my copy of I Saw the Devil is, but it's right here because I watched it yesterday. So I rewatched it yesterday. It's great. Basically, this serial killer murders this cop's girlfriend, and he decides to go on a one-man rampage against the serial killer. And it's basically a cat and mouse game where they kind of switch back and forth between who's the cat and who's the mouse because they kind of figure out who each other are, and they kind of enjoy fucking with each other. And it's pretty entertaining. Super graphic, super violent, lots of blood. Lee Byung-hung is in it, who, if you've seen the G.I. Joe movies, he was in those, and he was also, like, Ethan Hawke's friend in the recent Magnificent Seven, and I would tell you, if you've seen The Good, the Bad, the Weird, he's in that too, but if you haven't seen I Saw the Devil, probably haven't seen The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, so... I know Johnny's seen it.
The Bittersweet Life.
I know Johnny's seen it, but I don't know if anyone else...
Before.
Oh, we have?
We've talked about this movie because it was in my top 10 of the top 100 films of the decade. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And if you guys want to see like a further discussion of it, check out our top 20 films of the decade episodes. I know they're long, but if you like just us talking about movies, those are good 2 episodes to check out. Yeah, this is one of my favorite directors, Ji-Woon Kim. He did, as far as like American movies, he did The Last Stand with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he also did The Good, the Bad, the Weird. He did A Tale of Two Sisters, which is a really good like psychological thriller, and he did A Bittersweet Life, which also stars Byung-hun Lee, and he's one of my favorite foreign actors. So definitely check out this director's filmography if you're interested in foreign films. But if you are a little queasy and don't like really graphic scenes, do not watch this because
I still can't watch the Achilles scene.
Violent.
Achilles scene.
Oh, yeah.
When I
You wanna see
rewatched
someone
this
pop an
yesterday, I turned it
Achilles.
away. I couldn't watch it.
Yeah, that one, that's a wild one. So I think Tristan might have seen this, but I don't know if Bobby's ever checked this one out.
No, this is one I've been wanting to for a long time, and I've heard you talk about it forever before this podcast, and then obviously in your top 10, just going through it. So I know a lot about the movie. I just haven't checked it out, but I want to whenever I have a chance. But I don't think I can get Jen to watch this one, so I'll have to find time to watch it alone. Yeah,
Don't even try.
Nope.
But yeah, I'll say you'll see it kind of a theme of most of the rest of my list, but I love a good revenge movie. That's probably my favorite genre of like subgenre of movies, and this is probably the best maybe the best one ever made. So if you like a violent revenge movie, check out I Saw the Devil, which is
Yeah,
also one of the greatest movie titles ever.
we're gonna get a handful of revenge movies in the last half of the episode here. But yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
this. Not much to say that they haven't said, but I highly recommend it. And I'll repeat that if you're at all queasy, if you're sitting there like, oh, I kind of am, I'm on the line. Just don't watch it.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
don't.
over the line for you. I'm a horror movie person. I watch a lot of horror and that kind of stuff. And even this, I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to watch that one again. Once was enough for me.
Yeah, I watch it every like year or so, year or two, and I can't watch the Achilles scene. It fucks me up. But yeah, I think that
All
brings
right,
us
so-
to Jay and Johnny. What did you pick?
So for Jay, I picked a movie that I just watched that I've been wanting to check out since 2013, the year it came out. And we mentioned where those other things were streaming. But on HBO Max, they just added the movie Joe
Yes.
from 2013, starring Nick Cage, and it caused some confusion in the group chat when I said, I was talking about Joe, and he was like, "What about me?" I'm like, No.
I'm watching Joe. No, not.
Yeah, I'm watching Joe. Yeah, but anyway, so it's David Gordon Green who did the recent Halloween movie. He did he do Mud? I want to say he also did Mud.
No.
That's wrong though. No, that's never mind. I watched a different movie.
I'll look up what he's done.
Yeah, so he's done Joe and he's done the new Halloween. He's been a producer on a bunch of stuff, but Nick Cage, he's the GOAT. He's great in it. It's basically just a story about a kid and his abusive father moved to a new town looking for work. He gets a job with this guy, Joe, played by Nick Cage, who also is a character with lots of demons. It's like in this, I don't know if it ever even says where it completely takes place, but it's in like a Louisiana type, like southern state with, different types of characters and stuff. It's really great. The main reason I wanted to talk about it on this show is because the story of Gary Poulter, who he plays the abusive father in this movie. And I was like, when the movie ended, I'm like, I have never seen that guy before, and he was amazing. I got to see what else he did. And then I look, he died the same year this movie came out. He was 53. He looks like he was about 75 because he lived an actual life of drug abuse. He was a struggling actor in the 80s. He was an extra in a couple things. Then he was homeless, and he was a drug addict, and he was, abused alcohol his whole life. And then when David Gordon Green went to make this movie, they basically interviewed local people in the town to see, who could be extras. And he was supposed to only have this small part where he's supposed to be skinning this deer, but then he knocked it out of the park when they basically gave him an audition. So they offered him the third lead role of the movie. And they said, basically, if you stay sober while you were filming, you can do this role. The dude stayed sober. He put out a movie, and he's incredible in it. And then 2 months after the movie was done filming, he got drunk, and either had a seizure or passed out in a very shallow puddle and died, basically. And it's a very sad story, but it's also kind of an uplifting story of someone that their whole life they wanted this one thing, and then they finally got it, and it was basically their final wish, because he died right after making it, after wanting that his whole life. And his legacy will live on because of this movie. He's incredible in it. He steals a movie with Nicolas Cage. Someone else coming in and stealing the show is rare. But Gary Poulter, shout out, R.I.P. He was awesome in this. So I didn't know that story until after I saw the movie, and then I read about that, and I was like, I got to bring that up because that's fucking incredible. And I can't believe it's something that in the film community, we follow a lot of people. I've never heard anyone talk about that before. So I wanted to share that. But really good movie. I recommend it. Ty Sheridan's good in it too. He's kind of hit or miss for me with a lot of his work, but him and Nick Cage have good chemistry, and the movie is good. But again, it's not as violent as I Saw the Devil, but it's not an easy movie to stomach if you can't watch abusive relationships and things like that. It has a lot of that. So, it's a tougher, darker movie to watch, but it's very good, and I highly recommend it. Has anyone else seen this movie?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, but I wanted to bring up two things real quick. He's directed Pineapple Express as well as Your Highness and some other comedies. Yeah. And he did direct two. So he directed the movie Joe. He also directed 2 episodes of a show called There's Johnny. So
perfect.
Wow,
Look at that
crossover.
All right, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, I like Joe a lot. I saw this back when it first came out. I mean, some Joes I like a lot. There's other Joes I'm not a huge fan of, but This Joe is a particularly good Joe, and I had a good time with it. I think Nick Cage now is having this huge resurgence, especially after Pig. We'll talk about that in a second, but he's having this revival among like indie movies as like this big face again. And this was one that I think kind of started that for him. It was back in 2013, so it was right when he was at the peak of doing bad stuff, and this was like the very beginning of me coming back on my personal radar at least and saying like, oh, I guess Nick Cage is doing good stuff again. And this kind of like slowly got me down the rabbit hole of watching more of his outlandish kind of stuff. And by the time we get to now, when he's back on the A-list, I was like, I knew it. I saw it back in the day on Joe. You know, I was on Team Cage back when I watched Joe, and that story, of course, you mentioned is really powerful. And I knew that back when I watched it originally, as I watched it. But after I watched it, we were doing research onto the movie, and we saw that story, and that's a really powerful story that adds to the performance as you're watching it. So I think if you're going to watch it now, knowing the fact that there's that reality behind the character, I think really adds to the performance. So I highly recommend Joe, the movie at least. The person, not so much. I'm not sold yet, but the movie I'm pretty sold on. So check that one out on HBO Max, like we said.
Oh yeah.
All right.
And yeah, I think our next few discussions might be quicker. We don't have as much to say about those, so let's get into. Bobby, you have K.
Yeah, so mine also has a very unknown actor named Thomas Mapother. Some people might know him as Tom Cruise.
Thomas Cruise Mapother the fourth.
Yeah. Yep, the fourth. But no, so I went with a movie that to me is a pretty underrated, like kind of like a date movie, I would kind of call it, or just one you can throw on like TV. But it's also
like date night.
Kind of like that, of course. But it is Night and Day, Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, directed by and a lot of people don't even realize that it was James Mangold, who now is more popular for doing Logan and Emmerich. What's the movie he just did? Ford versus Ferrari and all that, and he's doing the new Indiana Jones. But I saw this movie on a date, and I went into it thinking it was like going to be terrible. Like I was just like, oh, it's just a movie that I can go watch and like whatever. But I find it like really entertaining as like it's an action comedy, kind of a parody, pretty much a parody of the genre of Tom Cruise at the time. So he was in the movie, he is basically the super spy, does everything right, is suave and smooth and all that. And Cameron Diaz just kind of stumbles into this plot and is like the regular everyday person that falls for the spy. And it, you know, it's a perfectly like fun movie that I think you can kind of throw on and watch whenever, just put on a few scenes. You don't really need to care about it that much, but I find it very entertaining. I think Cameron Diaz and Tom Cruise are good in what they're doing in the movie. And it's just I find it's a way more capable movie than it should be because of James Mangold. I think he directs it really well, has some really compelling action scenes in it too. So has anyone else seen it? Again, this is a movie it's straight up it's a cable movie, but it's a cable movie that I could throw on like whenever and just watch scenes because it's just kind of fun.
I don't have cable.
Yeah, I saw it once in like 2012, 2013, and like my takeaway from it is it's like the perfect, like, it's Saturday, it's 2 o'clock, it pops up on FX, and you're like, fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
That's kind of my vibe of that movie. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, you need to go out and pay $20 to download this movie and watch it on VOD. It's like, if you're bored on a Saturday flipping through channels and you see it on one day, check it out.
Yeah, I think it's comfort food that's better
it's
than
like you see
a
the
lot of
trailer
other
and
ones.
it's like, yep, this was a movie. Yeah, this was like, you see the trailer and you're like, yeah, that's a movie that in like 4 months is going to be talked about by Sasha Pilraver on FX or whatever afterwards.
Exactly.
Like that's exactly the type of movie it is. I've never checked it out. I like James Mangold, so maybe one day if I'm like looking for a movie to watch with Angelica, I'd put it on.
It's way better directed than this movie should be, which is what is fascinating to me about it. Is like there's a lot of really good elements in a really plain kind of movie that makes it way more entertaining than it should be. So I like.
And I usually take
that, but
I take Bobby's recommendations to heart, unless I mean, he did once say that The Spy Who Dumped Me was pretty good, so I don't know if I completely trust him on these types of movies. But yeah, so
I said Jen liked that one. I've never seen that.
You liked it. You pitched it.
I pitched a movie in an argument. In an argument, I lied. Yes, I did.
You're a liar. Just like
I did lie.
Okay.
All right.
Like Night and Day. Don't bother. Not streaming anywhere. Check Tristan L.
Find it on cable.
All right, my L is one that is streaming somewhere. It's on HBO. I think it might be on the Criterion channel. It's on the Criterion collection if you're into like buying Blu-rays and that kind of stuff. It comes in a poster, and it's Lady Snowblood from 1973. This was the inspiration to Kill Bill. It's what I knew it as. Quentin Tarantino has cited over and over again that this was the movie he watched that made him say, "Oh, I'm gonna make Kill Bill." And there's stories of him even having like prints of this movie on set of Kill Bill and having the crew like watch this movie in between takes to make sure they were like really doing it. And it's like you watch on YouTube and they're like, "Oh, here's the exact shot or like the exact scene that he took and lifted to make Kill Bill." And the format is very much the same here too. I think it almost does it better if I'm being honest. It's a bit more morally complex, but it follows a young woman who is essentially bred from birth to be a vengeance killer to take down the men who wronged her mother. So you're following the woman, Lady Snowblood, and throughout the first half hour, 45 minutes, you're getting the flashbacks to her origin, similar to how Kill Bill like introduces you with the action and hooks you, and then you are like, okay, here's her journey up the mountain and all that kind of stuff. And you can see where Quentin Tarantino took notes not just from the story but from the action. But I also think that while the action here is kind of ridiculous and has a lot of like the blood spurting everywhere kind of stuff, it's very fun to watch. It also similar to I Saw the Devil or some of the other movies we're going to talk about. It subverts the revenge in an interesting way, especially for 1973 when it was still early in the era that kind of like samurai vengeance thriller stuff. So when she ends up meeting these characters, a lot of them are one of them is like an alcoholic gambling addict who has nothing in his life, and it's like you're killing this man who's like completely lost everything. And you have this other person where the man's being hanged and she decides, do I have to save him from being hanged so that I can kill him myself? And it's like all she has to be the one to kill him. And there's a lot of moral complexity there that I think Kill Bill lacks. Where Kill Bill is essentially, especially in the first one, just like let's have the coolest action scenes you possibly can have, and this has that while also having moral complexity. So I think if you want to check out really fun violence with some moral questions and some compelling, really great colorful shots that inspired some of the best filmmakers today, I'd definitely check out Lady Snowblood. I think that's on HBO Max. There's also a sequel on HBO Max, so if you want to watch that, check it out on there. So I highly recommend it. Really entertaining watch.
Yeah, I'll say probably. I'm guessing as the only other person who's ever seen this. If you like filmmaking, check this movie out because I do think Kill Bill is a much easier movie to like recommend to people nowadays. Like this is more jarring. Like if you went back to watch it and you aren't used to like a 70s low budget foreign film. But it's fun. I haven't watched it in a while, but I did the same thing Tristan did. Found out it was the reason Kill Bill got made and checked it out. And it's good if you want to see super low budget foreign film of a lady getting like cut in half and then a bunch of blood that's literally just like red paint, which is some of my favorite stuff from back in the day. Check it out. I think it's worth a watch. If you like, even if you like some of the Bruce Lee, like Enter the Dragon type of movies back in the day, like this is something a little more violent, but it's something that I think you'd enjoy. So if you like 70s action films, and again, good revenge movie, and you can definitely see if you watch this, you can see the parallels between this and Kill Bill. But yeah, I was excited when Tristan put this on this list because it's a movie that I feel like no one ever talks about unless they mention, Tarantino briefly. But shout out to Lady Snowblood.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd never seen it.
Yeah,
I don't know
never
fuck
seen
all
it.
about it. So
Yeah, didn't think so. This is most of the list is Tristan and I have seen it, and no one else has seen it. If it's like one of our movies, I feel like.
Yep.
But yeah, that gets us to we gotta start moving quickly through some of these. So Joe, that brings you to M.
yeah, so I have Monster Calls, which is directed by J.A. Bayona, who also directed Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and this movie is. I haven't seen Fallen Kingdom, but this movie is a billion times better than that because this movie is actually like good.
I agree.
It's
Yep.
I always have this weird thing of this movie because I have no idea who the hell I would ever recommend this movie to because it deals with like monsters and like a lot of kids fantasy themes and like elements in the movie, but there's also like very dark elements to this movie that I feel like it's a very narrow window of like I would recommend this to people who are like 12 to like 15. Because there's the movie deals a lot with like the morally gray. Like one of the big themes of like there is no good guys, there is no like for the most part there is no good guys, there is no bad guys. Everyone's kind of has their story to tell. It has Toby Kebbell, who I feel like is severely underrated as an actor, and it also has Felicity Jones, who people might know through various movies, but most likely Rogue One, which she's the star of. And it also has Sigourney Weaver doing a British
I
accent for some
rebel.
reason, which is always weird when I watch that movie. And it, also from Star Wars and various other things, has Liam Neeson as the voice of the monster. So it's like this basically this little kid. His mom has well, he's not little. He's like middle school age. His mom has cancer, and this like tree monster shows up and kind of talks to him and tells him various stories and tries to like help him along. And the stories have various complexities, and it's just like an interesting, weird movie. It's on Netflix right now. Definitely, I think worth checking out, but I still really don't know who I would recommend it to because I do feel like there's a narrow window of like who might be interested in this movie.
I would say if you're someone who has maybe dealt with any sort of trauma, this might be a tough watch, but I think it's a good movie for that because it basically the whole movie is kind of a very metaphoric of like coping.
Yeah.
And I think it does a very good job of that. And that's really all I remember about it. I saw it and I liked it, but it was something that kind of left my mind until Joe put it on this list. And I was glad he did because it reminded me of kind of how much I liked it when I saw it. So, yeah, if you like a good movie about just like coping and dealing with the struggles of life. I mean, we're all going to have to deal with really really hard shit throughout our lives, and this is a good movie about that. And I'm a sucker for movies like that. Whether it's this or I think a couple movies we're going to talk about later, at least one, a great Nick Cage movie that we'll get to. I think movies about like coping and dealing with loss and stuff are important. So I think this does a really good job of showcasing that in
Yeah.
like a unique way that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I would say this is like a much darker version of like Bridge to Terabithia, which was a dark kids movie, but it dealt with some of the same like similar themes. But yeah, definitely a way better movie than Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom by Jay Bayona. It's the reason he got the movie, I think, for sure.
Yeah, pretty
But
much.
yeah,
Yeah, I would
it's
put
really
it.
good.
I'd put it in the same realm of like a Labyrinth or like a Dark Crystal or like a Never-Ending Story of that
Hmm.
kind of film. If you've seen those films and you're like, oh, I wish there were more movies like that, I would say to check out A Monster Calls.
I'll add it to my list. It's been one I've wanted to see forever, and I mentioned Jedi Fallen Kingdom on our episode about blockbusters, and you guys both mentioned to watch this, so I definitely want to check this one out. And you guys sell it when we talk about the fantasy elements and the elements of grief. I think that's something I'm gonna like a lot, so I'll definitely check this one out.
Yeah, it's like
This one reminded me a
2:15.
lot. This was like a British live action version of like a Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah,
It was
I
very
would say
much a lot
that.
of the same
Yep.
elements of like a
Yep.
Spirited Away and type of stuff, and it's a good one if you like Studio Ghibli and some of the movies like that. I think this is a good one to check out for sure. And I think it should have gotten a lot more Oscar buzz that year because it came out in a weaker year for movies, and I remember it getting basically snubbed from the Oscars if I remember
Yeah,
correctly,
because it
and
was a
being
Netflix
disappointed
movie.
by that.
It was a
Yeah.
Netflix movie before they really started pushing him for the Oscars, and they really
No, it
voted
was.
for
I
him
mean, it
that
was
much.
released in theaters though, because that's where I
It was
first
in
saw it.
theaters.
I thought it
Yeah.
was. What didn't Netflix produce it though, or
Maybe they
whatever it was?
partially did.
They
They
I don't
might
know,
have.
but it was still like
yeah,
world release in theaters because I remember that's where I saw it.
yeah. Okay,
But who
I could be
knows?
wrong. I just remember I think I saw it on Netflix.
All
Yeah, it
right.
came out on Netflix like right after it,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
even before it came out on DVD. So I saw it then. But yeah, I think it's a very, very good movie that is something no one ever really discusses. So I'd say check it out and don't judge a director just on a bad studio film that they had to kind of do, just like Green Lantern with Martin Campbell. I think this is more of a showcase of what a director does than a movie with a bunch of notes from a studio.
Yeah. All right, and I think
All
that
right.
brings us to Johnny with N.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. My N is The Night Comes for Us. It's another, well, it's a Netflix movie. Has anyone seen this?
Nope.
I'll start with that.
Nope.
Okay,
No.
so this is my selling point. Joe Taslim, who is amazing. He was in the Swordsman movies, and he was just Sub Zero in one of the like probably the best part of the Mortal Kombat movie that just came out. It's basically the Raid, but a little more of a storyline than the first Raid movie. Not as cohesive, I think, altogether. But it's The Raid with Joe Taslim, and it's him basically protecting a child. So I know Joe will like it because he's into those type of movies like Man on Fire. So if you combine The Raid and Man on Fire, this is very similar. And I'll just say, if you like really good hand-to-hand combat action sequences, this has some violence in it, but it's super fun. It's a dark movie, but it's great to watch, and it's a really good action movie that no one talks about. And I think it's a good one to recommend because it's on Netflix. It was a Netflix movie, and Netflix, whoever the fuck runs Netflix, is an asshole and has like the worst formula ever for recommending movies to you. So search this one if you like The Raid or if you like action movies, and check it out. It's kind of just a good change of pace type of thing. If you haven't really seen foreign films and you want to watch, you don't really need to pay much attention to dialogue. It does have a bit of story, but for the most part, you get to see Joe Taslim and Iko Uwais from The Raid have really epic fight scenes, and you get a lot of that. You get a good warehouse fight. I'm a sucker for those, and it's fun. So check it out. And yeah, it's a great action movie that no one talks about. Everyone gives love to the Raid movies, and rightfully so. But this one is maybe a step below those, but deserves some love and a shout out. So that brings us to and Joe's got his ready. Bobby.
Yeah. So as Joe is showing now, is Office Space, which was definitely a favorite growing up. I saw this for the first time at a friend's cottage, and we watched it, I think, about 5 times, like that weekend that we were there. We just wanted to stay in and just kind of watch this movie. One of my most quoted movies of all time. But basically, if you've never seen it, because it was a cult movie, and it's definitely become a classic since then. I don't know how, if a lot of younger audiences are checking it out now or finding it, but basically you have Ron Livingston playing a kind of down and out office guy at a place called Initech. He's, not happy with his job. He's kind of paranoid about things. He's unmotivated. He goes to a hypnotherapist after a breakup, and his hypnotherapist dies of a heart attack in the middle of hypnotherapy. And so he's stuck in this Zen, I don't care state. And that kind of sets the kind of plot of changing his entire personality and how that ends up moving him through the office. There's just so many classic characters, I think, in this movie. Mike Judge did this, who at the time was probably most famous for Beavis and Butthead as the director, but he did a short called Milton and then kind of took that and made this movie. And Stephen Root is hilarious as Milton. Gary Cole is one of the best comedy, I would call him a comedy villains of all time, as Bill Lumbergh. If you've ever heard anyone do that, anyone have a case of the Mondays, or I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday, that's his character in this, and just one of the best office parodies. I definitely appreciate it even more, even though I loved it when I was younger, being in an office setting. So many great things, especially like the random little rules, like the TPS reports and the covers on them, and the joke about that. The entire plot with that they relate back to like Superman 3. I could go on and on about it, but I think it's a great comedy. Jennifer Aniston's in it now. People would recognize obviously her going back, but I think it is like one of the best representations of literally an office space in a parody way. But I think it's great and hilarious, and so many great moments. Joe, I know you have it. Tristan, did you watch this one when you were younger? Or did you catch it later on?
Yeah, I watched this a lot. This is one of those movies where it's like, I grew up I was born in like late 90s, so I grew up in like the era when this was one that I watched when I was too young to watch it, type of thing, where it's like you stick it in when your parents aren't home, or like you're out at your friend's house and it's your rebellious friend who watches stuff you shouldn't watch, and this is one of the ones you watched. And to me, this was a rebellious movie. And looking back at it now, it's not exactly that. I mean, it's not a kids movie or anything like that, but it was for me one where I was like, "Ooh, I shouldn't be watching this," and I watch it a lot anyway. And it's one that I quote a lot. And once I got into the office space myself, it's one that resonated so much more with me. All those little rules that you wonder, like, why are we even doing this, and what is the point of this? And this, I think, captures like those superficial office relationships and like all of the ways you converse with people in your office and the social structure of it. And sometimes you have that wish fulfillment of being like, man, I wish I could just destroy this computer. I wish I could just throw these like shift reports out the window and never have to do them again. And this is kind of that wish fulfillment movie too. If you have this like maybe you work from home, maybe not, but if you have this built-in rage where you're like, once in a while, I just want to destroy my office computer, and this, of course, is the one where you get to do that. So, a really,
Yeah,
really fun movie and one that I watch a lot.
and definitely shout out to John C. McGinley also. Dr. Cox from Scrubs plays one of the Bobs who come in later in the movie, but really great character in this too. Joe, you obviously own it.
Yeah, I really like it. It's one I haven't seen in a while, and it kind of makes me want to go back and rewatch it. I think it was like Applebee's or like TGI Fridays before this movie like had a thing where like all their waitresses had to have like a bunch of buttons, and that's where the Pieces of Flair thing came from.
Flair, yeah.
Pieces of Flair came from with Jennifer Aniston's character, and like after this movie came out, they stopped doing that because basically they realized this movie was making fun of them. But yeah, it's very relatable to anyone who's ever had a job. Essentially, it's just completely a satire on like middle management.
Yeah, it's I think it's the best collection of character actors ever put on screen. Like to whether it's Ron Livingston who leads this movie, he's a great character actor that appears in a bunch of stuff like The Conjuring and other movies. He's in a million things. John C. McGinley, as Bobby mentioned, Diedrich Baker or Bader, who is in a million things as a character actor. The great Stephen Root, my stapler guy. You get a lot of dodgeball crossover because Gary Cole, one of the great comedy character actors of all time, also in that with Jason Bateman as the announcers of the dodgeball tournament. Two of the best, like maybe the best comedy, one of the best comedy duos, like not mentioned, put on screen. He's also Ricky Bobby's father. He's in a ton of stuff.
He's the dad
The
in
one
Kim
that I'll
Possible.
mention, Bobby. Do you remember? Okay, Bobby, I know you remember the movie I Spy with Owen Wilson and Eddie Murphy. Yeah. Do you remember who like the slick, sexy super spy was in that movie? It was Gary fucking Cole.
Like I knew that's where you're going, but I couldn't even picture it.
No, and if you rewatch that, so shout out to the fucking probably awful movie I Spy. That's another movie Bobby and I grew up watching for some reason. Yeah. Randomly in the car, but yeah, he plays like you watch him be Bill Lumbergh, and then you see him as like he's supposed to be like the James Bond type of character in that movie. It's jarring once you realize it, and then because I've seen both movies and I never connected that until I looked at his IMDb one day, and I was like,
I need to look that up. Like I need to see him in that movie.
Yeah, right. So yeah, look at a picture of that. He's got like a ponytail, I want to say, and he looks completely different. But yeah, great collection of character actors. Mike Judge directed it, who did Beavis and Butthead,
King of the
Hill. So if you're into like that style of comedy, Office Space will do that.
He looks like a mix.
Will satisfy you.
He looks like a mix of.
He's like a Mexican person in that movie.
Yeah, he looks like Antonio Banderas. Like they made him look like that.
It's wild. Yep. So yeah, that's the same dude in that movie and Bill Lumbergh, and that was a connection I didn't make, even though I've seen both those movies probably upwards of 15 times. But yeah, Office Space, classic, one of the best comedies of their era, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't checked it out. It's an indie film, but I feel like it's a cult classic, and most people kind of have seen it or at least have referenced things. So if you watch it, you'll probably get things that people have said to you that you never understood. If someone ever talks about a stapler to you, they definitely made a reference to this. And working in a restaurant that uses a lot of staplers, we all do that. So, yeah, the great movie. I was glad we could bring up because we either did new movies or maybe movies people haven't heard of. Office Space is a classic, and I'm glad that was on the list. But I'm very excited to get to our next movie. If no one else has anything to say about Office Space,
no, it's on Stars if you have Stars, I guess.
All right, so Tristan, that brings us to P.
You mentioned new movies. This is one that just came out a couple of months ago at this point. My P movie is Pig, the Nicolas Cage vehicle, the one that at least for me, it feels like it's been a center of conversation for a little burst of time among film people. Michael Sarnowski directed it. It was his directorial debut, and it follows Nick Cage, who's a pig farmer in the Wyoming forests, and one of his prize pigs gets kidnapped, so he goes on this revenge journey across the Ozarks of wherever he's at throughout this forest towns to get back his pig. And he goes
Seattle. He's in Oregon.
Oregon,
somewhere.
Yeah, he's in rural Oregon.
He's in Portland.
And he's going through the culinary scene of this rural Portland backwoods, this really fascinating world that he walks through, and it subverts revenge in a really interesting way. You mentioned that before a little bit in some of the other stuff, but I think this very, very directly addresses revenge and like the cost of revenge. And he, in a movie like this, you'd expect it to be, oh, Nick Cage like goes off the rails and like has this yelling rage spree. He like axe murders a bunch of people and gets revenge for his pig, and that's not what this movie is. This movie is very methodical, and Nick Cage walks around with this very slow weight. Like you can feel that he has that rage inside him. Like, he has this past built up, but he's not unleashing it. And in a scene where you would have him go off the rails and chop a guy's head off or something, you just have him in a couple of sentences like completely tearing down someone's life. Like you have this scene where he meets up with an old colleague from his underground crime world who's now running this very fancy restaurant in Oregon, and in this couple of sentences, this very casual conversation, Nick Cage is able to just completely destroy this man's worldview, and you can watch his soul just kind of crush in this conversation. And in a worse movie, that would be Nick Cage going in there and chopping his head off, or going in there and music blasts while he goes and just kills hundreds of guys. And this is not that. It's a human movie, and the end is very human. And throughout the whole movie, you don't get those revenge beats. You get parts of it, but they purposefully hold you back from getting the full-on bloodthirsty Cage that you think you're looking for, to give you what you actually want, which is a really, really good Cage performance, one that is powerful, one that sticks with you, and really cuts to the heart of this kind of a story, this kind of a character. It looks great, it sounds great. I can't wait to see more from this director, and I hope it brings Nick Cage back to like the forefront of actually critically acclaimed stuff instead of just like the indie horror scene.
Yeah, as the only other person I think who's seen this, right? You guys haven't
Yeah,
seen it,
I haven't seen it.
yet.
Yeah, not yet.
I mean, my way to describe this movie is it's John Wick if you replace all the violence with emotion, like emotional content and human connection. Like you get a lot of that, and it's just one of the most well-made movies I've watched in a long time. One of the most human stories. Like I love it. It deals with food. It hits close to home in terms of that. Like I love a good movie about a chef, and it's not what I expected after watching the trailer. The trailer, if you watch the trailer before you see the movie, you're expecting this big Nick Cage's version of Taken, and it's not that. And then if you watch the trailer after you see the movie, you see like, okay, this actually did kind of tell me what the movie was going to be about, but it's just not what I expected it to be because of how most movies are. It's my favorite movie of the year. It's going to take a lot to top it. This reminded me so much of Good Time, not because it's a similar story, but because when I saw Good Time, about halfway through that movie, I said, every single movie that the Safdie brothers makes from now on, I am on board. And this is the same thing. Anything after this, I'm going to check out anything Michael Sarnowski does, because I think this is just such it's amazingly directed. The performances are great. It's the best performance of Nick Cage's career. One of the Wolf brothers, I think Alex Wolf, is in it. He's really good. This is another movie, as we talked about with A Monster Calls. It's a movie about coping. Every different character, like in different ways, you get different aspects of it, and it comes together beautifully in the end. It all comes together perfectly. Like the final act might make you cry. Like it's very emotional. It's a great movie, and it's my choice. I'm gonna be pissed when the Oscar nominations come out for this year's movies, because I know Pig is gonna be like uncut gems. Speaking of the Safdie brothers, and get snubbed from everything, but should be nominated for multiple categories, and it won't. But I think it's just a phenomenal movie, an incredible directorial debut, and I recommend it to anyone. Even if you're someone who is not like Tristan and I and have checked out a lot of like the weird, cool stuff Nick Cage has done in like the last 10 years, check this one out, and maybe you'll get back on board with Nick Cage, and that'll transition you back to seeing like movies like Mandy, movies like Joe, which we discussed, and like Wally's World, and yeah, Color Out of Space. What's the one, Mother and Daughter, whatever the movie is where he's with Selma Blair and they parents start trying to kill their kids. He's done a lot of cool work that no one that's been very under the radar recently, and I feel like people know Nick Cage best as like the GIF guy. or the mean guy, and he's actually been doing so much fantastic work recently that I highly recommend Pig. I think it's probably his best work as an actor, and it's just a phenomenal movie. I was blown away when I saw it. I think it's something that everyone should check out. It's got something for everyone, I think.
Yeah, easily in my top 3 of the year, if not my top movie. So if not Oscar love, it'll get the Movie Changeup Award love, I'm sure, by the end of the year. Some
For sure.
nominations there.
Yeah,
For
very
sure.
prestigious.
I'm definitely excited to check it out. So,
Yeah,
not gonna
same
lie,
here.
I kind of, because I know nothing about this movie, I kind of intentionally tuned out what you guys said about it because I want to go into it like, for the most part, completely
Yeah.
blind.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah,
I
for
kinda
sure.
did
It's
the
definitely a
similar thing.
movie. I mean, even if you knew about it going in, I think it would still have a lot of like kind of turns and reveals and stuff that you wouldn't expect. But not going. I went into it only having seen the trailer, expecting a totally different movie,
Yeah. I haven't even
and
seen the
was just
trailer,
blown away
so.
by what came out. Joe, you sent our group chat the trailer.
Oh well, I don't remember
You
the
didn't
trailer.
watch it. You just sent it.
I
They
don't.
just saw Pig, Nicolas Cage,
He
and
just,
sent it.
pick Nick Cage. Here you go, guys. I mean,
Gotta get
thank
those
you.
clicks.
Because
I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember. I probably did watch the trailer. Couldn't tell you a single thing about it. My memory's ass. So.
Yeah, I super recommend it. I love it so much. I can't stop talking about it. I almost paid $20 to rent it on Amazon Prime to watch it again, and
I
then
thought about doing the
went
exact
against
same
my
thing.
instincts. But I probably will do that. But yeah, it's if you guys want to watch it and you can't go out to a theater, whether it's for COVID reasons or just timing reasons or whatever it is, it is $20 right now to rent on Amazon Prime. I'm sure in a couple weeks it'll be a lower price. It'll be like $6 to rent, and then it'll be streaming soon after that. So when you see it streaming, if you don't want to pay for it, check it out. But I think it's worth the price of admission for sure.
All right. Anyone have anything else to say about Pig? No.
Fucking Nick Cage, best actor
All
for
right.
2021. Fuck the Academy.
All right. So I think that brings us to Q, which is my pick, and it's another movie that's not streaming. And what?
I didn't know this movie existed, and I watched the trailer, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Where did you find this one, Joe?
It's one, like, I'm a big Bill Murray fan. It's always been like one of the movies I've never seen, and I've always wanted to. And I had Q, and I couldn't find anything. And I looked at movies that start with Q. I saw a quick change. I'm like, you know what? Now's the time. I watched it. I honestly really like this movie. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. How to describe. Basically, what this movie is: Bill Murray dresses up as a clown to rob this bank.
Oh,
You also have Jason Robards is the cop trying to catch him. Jason Robards played Ben Bradley in All the President's Men. Gina Davis is in it. The Randy Quaid's in it. You also have small not cameo appearances because they weren't famous yet by Tony Shalhoub, Stanley Tucci, Phil Hartman, and Kurtwood Smith. All have small roles throughout the movie. Kurtwood Smith is known best for
That
playing
70s
Red
show.
Foreman in That 70s Show, as well as being one of the main villains in RoboCop. But yeah, it's basically Bill Murray robs a bank dressed as a clown, and then he gets away, and you're kind of following him throughout the movie. There's a bunch of twists and turns. There's a lot of tense moments. Johnny was talking about the Safdie brothers, and midway through the movie, if the Safdie brothers were ever to do a remake, it would be this movie. I'd like to see a more serious tone, their kind of style with this plot. I think it'd be very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I definitely think all three of you will like it. It's like I said, it's not streaming anywhere, so you might have to like pay to rent it, but I think it's worth $3 or whatever you'll have to pay because I enjoyed it. It's basically like he basically played a similar character essentially to like Phil Connors from Groundhog Day in the early version, or like his character in Scrooge. Like, what if that guy robbed a bank? Essentially, he co-directed the movie. I just thought it was a really fun movie that people should definitely watch, especially if you're a Bill Murray fan. I didn't watch the trailer, so I don't even know. I'm curious.
I'm a
like,
huge Bill Murray fan, and I've checked out almost every movie I could ever find with him in it, good or bad. And this movie was never on my radar. I didn't know it existed, and I watched the trailer today to prepare to be able to talk about it. The whole trailer, focuses on how crazy Randy Quaid is.
Yeah, Randy
And
Quaid is like a side character in this movie.
yeah, though he is a
What?
big character in the trailer, and he is going crazy in every scene that he's in, and I'm just like, what is this movie? I need to watch this, so I will check it out. This is one I would pay to watch for sure. Yeah, you pair Bill Murray with Gina Davis, and then you have Randy Quaid as his crazy old self, before his new crazy self,
Yeah.
which is much less likable. But yeah, I'm interested in checking this out. I saw the trailer and it was Bill Murray in clown makeup, and I was like, "What the fuck did Joe pick for this letter?" And yeah, I'm interested. You sold me on it. I'm interested to check it out. I think this maybe could be a good one for a future movie change-up.
Yeah,
repick.
definitely
And
like reboot. Like I said, I'd love to see this after. If they were to ever do a remake, this is what I'd want them to do, and I definitely feel like it's very rebootable because of the simple premise of the plot of Bill Murray and his crew on the run from
It
the.
sounds exactly like something we would have come up with
It'll-
in a reboot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it keeps
It
just
sounds
keep
like
going
exactly-
wrong.
Sounds like someone rebooting or remaking Joker. Like it's
the
someone
reboot
like
is Good Time, but Robert Pattinson has clown makeup on.
Yeah.
that's essentially what I'm getting from Joe's pitch.
I'm
to this.
down.
But yeah,
Sounds great.
it looks
I'm really
weird.
looking forward to watching it now. I mean, I never probably would have even heard of it until you brought it up for the show, and your pitch on this one sold me. So good pitch, Joe. I'll give you the win on that one.
Thank you.
But
I do
yeah,
what I can.
I like that a lot. I'm definitely gonna check it out. It's $2.99 to rent on Amazon, so
Yeah, it's
okay,
worth
$3.99.
$3.
I'll pay $3.
That's worth $3 for that, and I can't wait to see what you guys think about it. You
sounds-
might all come back and
sounds
be like,
great.
"That movie was ass. Don't care. I thought it was great."
Sweet. All right. Well, I'm excited for it. So that brings us to me, and I have R. I went with the movie that I just watched a few days ago, and it is a movie that is currently not streaming, but I paid $6 to rent it on Amazon because anything Mads Mikkelsen is, I will watch. It is called Riders of Justice. I believe it's a Danish movie, so it is a foreign film, but it's a revenge film, as we've talked about. And it's another movie I like. I mean, Taken is fun, but it's kind of a revenge movie in a way, but he's going to rescue his daughter. Nothing really goes wrong for him. A couple bad things, obviously. His daughter's friend is dead and stuff, but for the most part, happy ending. He rescues the girl. Riders of Justice is a revenge movie that really deals a lot like I Saw the Devil, that the cost of getting revenge might bring you in much different ways than I Saw the Devil, but it's a really, really good movie. It's about basically, to sum it up without spoiling anything, it is Mads Mikkelsen is a soldier. It doesn't really go into that completely, but basically he calls his wife and daughter. His daughter's bike was stolen, and they're on the phone with him because she's trying to get her to school. And he says, "I'm going to have to stay for 3 more months or whatever." So, dad's not coming home. So they decide to take the day off. They get on a train. The train explodes. The wife dies. The daughter lives, but there's a guy in the train who switched seats with the wife because he was sitting and they were both standing. So he said, "Sit down." So she dies because of the explosion. He is like an analytics guy. His whole job is figuring out basically like analytics of like, okay, like this event leads to this event, leads to this event, leads to this event. It's very interesting, like his work. So he figures, hey, I can help out this situation. They figure out that the reason that this train crashed was because there was a mob. The Riders of Justice are this really evil mob, and there was a mob leader that was about to basically rat out the rest of the gang, going to court. So him and his lawyer were sitting down, and they basically bombed this train or whatever to kill this guy. So his wife was circumstantial to this. It wasn't an accident. It was on purpose. And then it sets out as a revenge movie with a few big twists. Good action. Mads Mikkelsen is incredible in it. You get a lot of his range. You get a different character than I've seen him really play. And I watched it and I really enjoyed it. So I recommend it to anyone who likes a good revenge film, anyone who likes Mads Mikkelsen, which everybody should, especially if he does a religious allegory film, which Tristan and Joe both had to pitch. But yeah, I'm a sucker for Mads Mikkelsen. I'm a sucker for revenge movies. This was right up my alley, and I really enjoyed it. So this is one that I don't know. It technically, I think it came out in 2020. At least it was made in there. So I don't know what it's eligible for Oscar wise, but I hope it's something that gets love um, for best foreign film come Oscar season, because Mads Mikkelsen is great, and everyone should watch this.
Yeah, I want to second Johnny's endorsement. This is a great one. I found this because critic Mark Commode that I like a lot recommended it. He had a really mostly positive review on it, and I checked it out on his recommendation. I thought it was really, really good. When I saw that Johnny put it on the list, I was excited. I forgot about it, and this is like, oh look, now I get a chance to talk about Riders of Justice. I forgot how good this one was, and yeah, you mentioned the release dates are kind of weird, so I'm not sure. It's very weird the last 2 years to figure out what's eligible for what. You know, like I watched Saint Maud the other day, and it was released in like 2018, and technically it's eligible for like the upcoming awards of 2021, and I'm like, well, it doesn't make any sense. And
well, like Dead Pig, same thing. It says the release date was 2018, and it just came out this year technically. So like, who knows? But yeah, this year's Oscars are going to be weird figuring out eligibility for sure.
But I definitely recommend Riders of Justice. We're covering like the whole range of revenge thrillers this episode here, but this is much different than the rest of the ones we've covered. I think we covered a lot of much darker, much like, oh, here's the dark side of revenge. Here's like someone losing their soul over this really dark 2-hour movie, and this is, I mean, it has that in there, but it's not necessarily that as dark. There's a lot more comedy in this than I was expecting, and the tone was a lot more light than I expected it to be, at least at certain parts. It weaved throughout the light and dark of the tone really in an interesting way. So I think you'll like that. If you like tonal shifts in your movies, I think it's something you'll want to check out. And if you're usually turned off by how dark and intense revenge thrillers tend to get, at least something like I Saw the Devil, where like, oh, if you don't like gore, don't watch it. And this is not that. This is much more of an easy watch than the ones we mentioned before.
Yeah, I was surprised by how much comedy this was, and the comedy hits well. I think that's tough sometimes for foreign movies to cross over comedy wise. But like, you know, it's not like Amelie. It's not a straight comedy, but there's a lot of jokes in it, and they work very well. I love all of the actors. It's directed very well, and like Tristan said, it shifts seamlessly through tone throughout. So it's dark, but it also has a lot of comedy, and it's a fun watch. So if you can stomach a foreign film, and everyone should. I mean, you guys all know how to fucking read. Watch this movie.
Reading's hard.
It's very good.
If you don't like reading, for some reason, there's an English dub on Amazon. So if you want to watch someone dub over Mads Mikkelsen's performance,
don't watch dubs movies. Just as a rule, don't watch dub movies unless it's animated. Never watch a dub movie.
What about the old Godzilla movies?
Still, those are much better. Growing up and being an adult and rewatching those with subtitles.
They're terrible.
So much better than
but the dubs are
watching
terrible.
them dubbed. Yeah, that's unwatchable. So check this one out and watch it with subtitles. Being a fucking adult.
I'm in.
And Bobby, speaking of revenge movies, what's our S?
S, very much a revenge movie. No, this is probably like the most popular movie on the list, I would say. Like, you know, amongst like people nowadays, even still. But it's one that inspired me in a lot of ways. And it's School of Rock. I think it's Jack Black's best movie. I think it's like just an incredible comedy, and also kind of like it's a family coming of age for some of it, and then it's just, you know, some of it is just straight up comedy. But yes, year one is fantastic, Joe. Yeah.
Joe owns year one. Okay.
This came out in 2003. I was 12 when it came out, and I was just learning, or like you know, kind of interested in learning to play the guitar, and this movie really got me interested in a lot of that. Like, I already liked classic rock music, but this made me really want to play it, just like watching Jack Black do it. There's a reason that the first like real guitar I got after the one I like learned on was this here, which is a cherry red Gibson SG, which is the same one that Jack Black plays in that movie. Other than liking AC/DC, because that is Angus Young's guitar, it was like one of the other reasons I love that. First riff I wanted to play was Sunshine of Your Love because of it. But I think this is a really funny movie, also a really sweet movie. All the moments with Jack Black and the kids, like it comes across like he is like so good with these kid actors. And behind the scenes, it was kind of said that he was like a father figure and just such a fun person to be around and a good influence. So there's a lot of good that came from it. Richard Linklater did this movie, which I think he's obviously a great director and has done a ton of great movies, but this is probably still my favorite of his just because of the impact it had on me. And I think it holds up. I just rewatched it like I don't know a month ago or so, and I still think it's just a fantastic movie. Um, Anyone else? I mean, everyone's probably seen it, I'm sure. Any other thoughts or any movies that kind of inspired you in other ways? Like it made me really want to pick up the guitar even more.
Not really. Like movies that inspired me for the most part. I don't know. I'm too dumb to be inspired. I
Yeah,
guess Shawshank Redemption inspired me not to want to go to prison.
there you go.
There you go. But you could escape.
But you can stand out in the rain.
Yeah, I don't know. I will
I'll
say,
say, I
if
mean,
I was gonna say,
I'll say I was inspired by this movie musically as well. For a lot of all my high school life and into college, I played guitar and I took guitar lessons for years, and I recorded a bunch of songs and learned a bunch of songs, and this is one of the movies that convinced me like I could learn how to play guitar and I could figure it out. Like I wasn't great or anything, but I was good enough to be able to play the songs that I liked, and that's all I really wanted to be able to do. And so that was a really fun time in my life to this, along with like Across the Universe, a lot of musical, not musical numbers, musical movies, as much as like jukebox musicals that featured other bands of music. That was something that really inspired me. Across the Universe was one for me that definitely got me hooked on music and hooked on the Beatles. School of Rock was great. Richard Linklater, one of my favorite directors now, but this was one that I watched a lot as a kid, not knowing anything about Linklater as a filmmaker, not knowing about like the Before trilogy, this and that, because I was just a kid watching a movie, and it still worked for me then. It works for me now. I think it's a timeless movie and one that I really want to go back and watch again because I haven't seen it in a long time. But it was one that inspired me a lot when I was a kid, and one that I always think back on and think of a lot of good quotes and moments from.
yeah, we'll also add. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything everyone else says about the movie, but I'll just add if you're a fan of the television show Survivor, it was written by Mike White, who finished second in Survivor David versus Goliath, and he also appears in the movie as well as Jack Black's roommate. So, just throw
I
that
also
in
want to
there.
Yeah.
mention.
I knew
also
he wrote
Sarah
it. I didn't know he
Silverman
was on
is
Survivor.
the roommate's wife, Sarah
Yeah.
Silverman,
Yeah.
which she plays a good bitch character in this movie that you want to root against. So, um, yeah, I'll say. I mean, as far as movies that inspired me, I will point to this. I mean, I played the guitar for like 2 years and then dropped out of that, but this movie really brought a lot of the music that I love now into my life, like Led Zeppelin, especially. I had a big love for, and I got into pretty young because of this movie. And this brought a lot of like, Black Sabbath and a lot of that early, you know, 70s, 80s, 60s rock and roll and stuff. Music that I to this day pretty much only listen to. Um, it just like kind of showcased that. So I think this movie did a good job. I think this movie has such a good cultural impact that people don't really give it credit for. I literally live a block away from a guitar school called School of Rock, which is really cool. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's fucking sweet. I pass it every day on my way to work. It's called School of Rock. It's like that. That's because of this movie. There's a musical that Andrew Lloyd Webber did that I'd be interested in seeing. I think would be really fun to check out. And I'm not big into musicals, but I would definitely go see this on Broadway or something. Would be awesome.
I'd give the endorsement to the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. It's definitely really good. Even
Yeah.
it's a soundtrack. If you want to listen to the soundtracks on Spotify, and you can listen to it, and you can see a bunch of the performances on YouTube, legally or otherwise. So it's worth checking out if you like the movie.
And I know a lot of the
Oh, yeah.
cast does like get together concerts like every once in a while. Like every few years it'll be like
Yeah.
I'll see it pop up online like oh the cast of School of Rock did a performance somewhere.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah,
the drummer did just pass away
Yeah.
like what a few months ago.
Yeah, I think so.
But that was pretty sad. And the guitarist has run into some troubles, but I think Jack Black still kind of keeps up with a lot of them, and still at least is an open line of communication that they can reach out to him about stuff. So it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, rock out. Yeah, great movie. Good choice for us to bring up. Now let's try that again. Speaking of revenge movies, Tristan, what's your teen movie?
All right, this is kind of a revenge movie. Not quite though. It's it's more of a break-in escape movie. You know, a home invasion movie, a thriller, if you will. It was kind of marketed as a horror. I saw it among the horror movie list, but I wouldn't quite call it that. The movie is I have T, so it's Till Death. The recent another 2021
Megan
movie.
Fox.
Megan Fox starred in this, and it was kind of hyped up as one of her as what would have been her comeback movie essentially, because she hasn't really been in anything super big or relevant, and she had a bit of a career, but it fell off, and she's had a bit of an online resurgence among people who are kind of reevaluating her career and looking back at it and saying like maybe we were too harsh on Megan Fox and we looked at her as just like this hot girl who couldn't do anything else but be hot, and we kind of devalued her. And now this is I hope a chance for her to be a little bit back into the relevance and maybe back into the horror scene, because Jennifer's Body is one that I like a lot from her. Uh, but this stars Megan Fox as a woman, and she's in a non-faithful marriage to her husband. Neither one of them is faithful to the other. They're in a very much set for what she thinks is a divorce, and they're on their anniversary night, and but she's essentially just married to him for the money, because he's extremely, extremely rich, and she doesn't want to just leave him. She wants to make it a divorce so that she's not poor, you know. So he takes her out for an anniversary dinner out to this far away, isolated home, and he handcuffs her to himself and kills himself, and essentially says, "Oh, I know you're cheating on me. I know we're gonna get a divorce," and he shoots himself. Now she's stuck in this house in the middle of nowhere, handcuffed to the dead body of her husband, and she has to rely on her wills to escape and get out. It's very much like Gerald's Game. If
I
you
was
saw
about to say
Gerald's
it
Game,
sounds a lot like Gerald's Game.
but it's more contained. It's not as abstract. It's very much like you're in the house, you're not leaving, kind of thing. And you follow her almost real time through the story, and it escalates and escalates. And I mentioned it's a home invasion type thing, so he wants to very much assure that it goes badly for her. So he makes it almost like a Home Alone situation where there's traps set throughout the house that make it harder and harder for her to get out, and he wants to make it as impossible as possible for her to live. And she's facing all these tasks and all these challenges, and you see like her breaking down as well. She's dressed up in this really nice dress for her anniversary, and throughout the movie she's getting dirty, tearing it up. You get kind of that transformation. So if you like that in a movie too, it's really fun in that genre of just, you know, survival movie thriller, and hopefully a Megan Fox comeback vehicle. She's good in it. It's not anything that I wasn't like, wow, Megan Fox was fantastic in that. She didn't blow me away in anything like that, but it was a good performance, and one that I hope at least gets her back in the conversation for stuff, because I'd be curious to see what she can do in a more modern movie, and something that might let her do a little bit more than just be the hot girl in Transformers type thing.
Yeah, that definitely
Yeah, I think
sounds
this
interesting.
movie. I watched the trailer. I haven't seen the movie yet. I want to watch it because I watched the trailer and I was kind of indifferent on it, but Tristan sold it to me, like explaining the plot a little more, because the trailer doesn't really do that. I didn't know why the husband was dead. I didn't know why they were handcuffed together. I think knowing that sells the movie a little better, and I think they should have showed that maybe in the trailer, but they probably didn't want to spoil like him killing himself or whatever. But I think that makes it
Everything
more
I said is
interesting.
only in the first like 15 minutes. So if you think I
Yeah.
spoiled it for you, you didn't. There's a lot of escalations and things that I didn't get to.
No, definitely. I think you. I don't think you spoiled it. I think you just established on something that they should have maybe sold the movie
Yeah.
on. Because like Joe said, like when I watched it, it looked like, okay, what if Gerald's Game happened, but then people tried to rob the house? But I think your movie, like you explaining what the movie is actually about, of it's all intentional, kind of gives it a little more depth. And I would definitely check it out. And yeah, I root for Megan Fox. I think she could have like a Kristen Stewart type of career where she is in like a big budget franchise, kind of panders out. People don't take her seriously, and then she starts doing indie movies, and people start liking her work. And maybe one day she gets something big again. Also, kind of like Robert Pattinson, same thing with Twilight. But yeah, I mean Megan Fox, I think she has more to show as an actress than what we've seen of her. So I'd be interested to check out a movie where maybe she can showcase that. Even if she doesn't blow me away, I think she could still be a leading actress, or a at least like a character actress somewhere. I think
Yeah,
she has a place in Hollywood.
she's good. She's good in her few appearances on New Girl. If
Hmm.
anyone's seen that, she's really good
I
in that.
agree.
So
That was the
yeah,
other thing that I saw, and I was like, "Oh, she's good in this. Like, good,
yeah.
good for Megan Fox." Like, I'm and some work and stuff. So when I saw she was leading like an action home invasion movie, I was like, all right, I would check this out, and Tristan sold me on it, so I'll definitely watch this.
Yeah, I'm
Looks
definitely
pretty
interested
fun.
in it now.
Yeah.
Is it
It's
streaming
not-
anywhere? Or it's
It's
not
not streaming right now, but it should be at some point soon. It's out on Blu-ray and everything else. So
Okay.
I rented it on Amazon for like $4 or whatever the price is to rent on Amazon for a movie. So it wasn't very expensive, and yeah, it's not one I'd go out and spend like if it was a $20 rental, I would say it wasn't worth it. But yeah, for the cheap price it is, for especially once it's streaming, I definitely think it's worth checking out. It's worth your time, if not worth your money.
All right.
Yeah, cool. All right, that brings us to one.
Another kind of home invasion-y type.
Yeah, similar type of film, and
Worth your time, worth your money.
tone-wise.
Yeah. It's called Unhinged. We're on you, obviously. It's called Unhinged. It stars Russell Crowe, and it's basically he is a crazy person who, he was already unhinged at the beginning of the movie, but then a kind of a road rage type incident happens, and it sets him off, and he basically goes after this mother and her kid, and it's kind of the mother and the kid on the run throughout the whole movie as a fucking crazy-ass Russell Crowe chases him. I think it came out either earlier this year or last year.
It was 2020 because it was the basically first one. It beat Tenet being like the first one to go back into theaters.
Okay.
It was like they were advertising it because it's a new production company and they were like touting it as we're gonna bring people back even before Tenet comes out and all that.
Congrats on that not happening.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, honestly, it wasn't as great as I thought it would be when I picked it, because it was one of those movies I wanted to watch and I had the letter U, so I'm like, oh, I'll just, use that, and that's my excuse to watch it. But I think it was still like a solid kind of small budget, I don't want to say revenge type movie, but, just kind of like, because horror, small budget kind of horror thriller type movie.
Yeah, it's another movie that deals with coping, but in a much different way than the ones
In a
we've
very
talked about.
non-healthy way.
Yeah, in a very non-healthy. You want to go opposite of some of the movies we've talked about coping-wise, kind of opposite of Pig. This is the other way you can go. But I think it was fun. It was a good movie to watch. It's one that, like, if you're in a relationship and you both kind of like horror movies or like a kind of a creepy type movie, check it out. I watched it with Angelica and we both had fun with it, kind of guessing what was coming next. And it's not a movie that you really have to like super focus on, so you can kind of talk during and guess at what's happening and kind of comment on it. And it was a fun watch. It's not a movie that I would say is anything special, but it's a very fun watch. Nick Cage, Russell Crowe is awesome in it. I think he, I think if you did put Nick Cage in this movie, it would be better. But I do think Russell Crowe is a fun character in it, and it has some dark moments, and it has some twists that like you don't really see coming, and it has some good moments. So
yeah, it's 90 minutes long, so it's a quick watch.
It's a quick, easy watch. You can get through it easy. It's a good one to watch with someone, and yeah, I think it does everything that it set out to do. It does well. This was not a movie that was made to get Oscar nominations. It was a movie made to entertain people for 90 minutes, and it does its job. Yeah. I think it's perfectly watchable.
I was gonna say there's a lot of obvious like setups and payoffs where they like grab an item and they like, oh, I need this for something really quick right now, and then they kind of put it in their pocket and they're like, oh, that's gonna definitely come back in about 45 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, also some plot holes, but like you don't really need to.
Yeah.
It's not something that like, oh, this movie has plot holes. It bugs me. It's this movie has plot holes, and it's kind of fun to mention that while I watch it. Like that's kind of how I watch the movie. Yeah. So it was fun to be like, okay, well, why would he be able to do that and no one around would notice? Like that type of thing. Like, okay, you fucking run over a guy at a gas station. Maybe some people might notice that and maybe call the police. But like, it does its own way of trying to set up like why those things might not happen. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but at least it at least addresses that.
There's a moment where the people get a cop's attention and he, attacks the cop, and
incredible.
Real life, within 30 seconds, there's gonna be every squad car in that city is gonna be chasing him, and he just kind of gets away with it.
This is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler alert at all. There is a moment where they signal to a police officer. He notices something is wrong. You think, okay, maybe he can help. And then fucking he's like he's in his car, and then Russell Crowe just rams into the car as hard as he can with a fucking like truck and completely annihilates this cop. And then you do not see another police officer the rest of the movie. And it's like, that dude just murdered a cop. Like, I think they might be able to get out after that. So it has some moments like that. Like, it's very much, don't think about it, watch it, enjoy it. It's 90 minutes. It's fun. Russell Crowe's enjoyable. But it's fun. Like, it's a good movie. I wouldn't say any of the performances really sell you on it outside of maybe Russell Crowe, but I recommend it to people to just check out and watch. If you need something to watch on a night when you're with your significant other and just want to check something out and have 90 minutes of fun, go for it.
And I think your biggest selling point to me is that it is 90 minutes for this type of movie, because honestly,
100%.
a lot of movies nowadays with a simple premise like that stretch it out to over 2 hours, or even just 2 hours, which is, I think, too long for something with this type of premise. And like, it just makes something that could be kind of a fun, like breezy watch like that and make it into a drag. So I might give it a watch just to,
it's free
90
on
minutes.
Prime, so
yeah.
This came out at a point in 2020 when like theaters were kind of open but not quite. Like once in a while they'd be open and they go back to closed again. And this was one of the movies that was open. And me and my dad, we were like, "Fuck it, we don't care how bad this movie is. It doesn't even matter what it is. We're just gonna go see something because we haven't seen a movie in so long." And we'd seen the trailer for this like over and over and over again at other things, and we knew it wasn't going to be very good, but we were like, who cares? The theaters are open. This looks like a dumb movie. And it absolutely exactly was that. It was like the dumbest movie I've seen in a long time, but in such an endearing, and weirdly, it's very entertaining. The same way that Johnny and Joe are talking about it, like it has that kind of just, it's so dumb that you can't help but just be like, oh, right, okay, you're not gonna bother with explaining this, or you're gonna give me like one line to explain it, or you're just gonna kill the guy and not have to explain it. And if you turn your brain off, you get a couple of drinks in you. This is a really fun time. And we mentioned like FX movies where it's like, oh, it's 2 p.m. on Saturday, I guess we'll sit down and watch it. This is kind of that one for me. Like if I was sitting around not doing anything and I was like, you know what, I got a case of Bud in the fridge, I can down 3 of them and then start Unhinged. Like that would be a good night for me. Just get a few drinks down and watch Unhinged with you and your friends, your family. It's a nice movie to roast, but not quite very good. I don't think I liked it as much as you guys did, but I had an alright time with it, and in the same way that you guys did. Just I understand it's going to be stupid, and just laugh at how much it fully embraces the stupidity of it. And Russell Crowe, like, just throwing his career into the trash can in the first scene, and you're like, oh god, what is this guy going to do right now? And he's like, I've gotten divorced, I'm broke, I need money, I'm doing Unhinged, I need this paycheck. That was what it felt like.
They did a movie about a guy who's divorced and needs to be crazy. So, yeah, I'd say check it out. And anything else we need to say about it?
I was just going to say, I looked it up, and it was written by the same guy who wrote the Shia LaBeouf movie Disturbia, and that just kind of makes sense.
In the same exact vein of Disturbia.
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. That brings us to V, I believe.
Yep.
So for V, I think I went with the most obvious V movie, but that is V for Vendetta. Another revenge movie.
Oh, fucking didn't even look. Boom.
There you go. This is a movie that I feel like is not talked about enough because people talk about Watchmen a lot, and that movie sucks. But V for Vendetta is like the really good version of what that could have been, and they did such a fucking amazing job with. Alan Moore wrote this, correct? That I'm not crazy on that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So this is the best you could do with a piece that Alan Moore wrote. I know he is famous for being a crazy person and not liking anything anyone made of his work, but V for Vendetta, as far as like if you've read the graphic novel and if you have seen the movie, it does a really good job of portraying what the original work is supposed to be. It's just so good. I think people don't. I think people kind of underestimate Natalie Portman as an actress. I think she's a great actress that has maybe not always been in the best projects, and then people shit on her because of the prequels of the Star Wars movies. But like, I think she's a great actress. She's really good in this. It's just overall, a great revenge film and a great movie about, like, again, we talked about this with what did we talk about this with?
You might have just.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Dead Pigs. It's kind of
Oh,
a commentary on political state and something like that. Like, it has political themes that hold up and to this day, and that's something that I think Alan Moore did really well, of kind of predicting the future in terms of like what is still going to be relevant in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, like what's always going to be relevant. He made good commentary on that, and V for Vendetta does that. But it's about basically V is this, I wouldn't say superhero, but he is a vigilante that is trying to take down a tyrannistic government that is kind of in control of everything. And I think it's a very fun movie. It's just a great movie with a lot of things to say. I think everyone should check it out. It's a movie that maybe has gained popularity. I don't think it was a super hit at the box office or anything, but it's a movie I think a lot of people have seen since it came out in 2004. I want to say, and
Yeah, about
it's
them.
just a great movie. It's something that I feel like we haven't talked about because it's not a movie that we would ever try to
Yeah, it's like
pitch a
unrebootable,
new
basically.
version of, and it's
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you can't reboot this in any way. They made the perfect movie in terms of what they were going for,
Yeah.
and I think people kind of forget about how much of a masterpiece I think this movie is. It's just such a good story, and Natalie Portman's great, and obviously Hugo Weaving. I feel like he's usually like the villain in a lot of things, and he's so good as V in this that, and you never even see his face. Like, I don't know, it's just a movie that I think everyone should check out. And I don't believe for a second that whoever the director of this movie, the same guy that did, I mean, I know he did like Ninja Assassin, but he did a bunch of shitty movies after this. This was a
James
Wachowski movie, and I think it's
McTeague.
their best
Yeah.
movie.
hey, wrote down James
Yeah,
McTeague.
yeah,
Yeah.
this to me, it's a better movie than The Matrix, and I think the Wachowskis basically were in charge of this whole thing and made a great movie. Um, I don't think they're very good at making their own stuff. If you look at that shitty space movie they did with Channing Tatum,
Yeah, I
Um,
saw that movie and I don't remember the
and
name.
Fuckface, whatever his name is,
Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne, yeah, Fuckface. But yeah, like I think the Wachowskis can do good work if they take something that is prior, like actually has content already. And this movie is great. So I kind of just wanted to give it a shout out and say how much I love it and see what everyone else's thoughts are on it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was about like as good of an adaptation as you can do. Like Alan Moore's the type where if they change anything, he's like, "Oh, my story was perfect. Why did you change it?" And if they do everything word for word exactly as he did it, he'd be like, "Why'd you remake it? You didn't do anything different." But like for the most part, like Natalie Portman's character in the graphic novel is like a 14-year-old prostitute, and I feel like especially if you're trying to do like a wide appeal movie, you can't really have your lead be like a 14-year-old prostitute. And so to kind of fit more with the theme and narrative of the movie and make it more contemporary, because I think the graphic novel did come out in the 80s, they just made her like an employee at the news station, because a lot of the movie dealt with like the propaganda of the news and all of that type of thing. So I feel like it worked for what they were going for, the changes that they made. I think it's just a good story overall. I agree basically with everything Johnny said, but I just wanted to add that of I understand that they made changes, but I think the changes that they made worked.
Yeah, and I think it's the perfect Hugo Weaving doesn't take his mask off. He always has the Guy Fawkes mask on. Kind of telling the story for the most part through Natalie Portman's character was like that's the best way to do that and give the movie a little bit more heart and relatability. Because I think if you gave this movie to more like incapable people who might have, or even if gave it to some people nowadays, they might have been like, oh well, V is a superhero character, so we're gonna make
Mhm.
him the focus and the lead, and not really, it wouldn't have had the impact I think as this movie does. So I think it's great. It's a really good adaptation of Alan Moore's work is not easy to adapt, and I think they did about the best job they could with it, and it's just a really good movie.
I love the original graphic novel. I told myself I wasn't gonna. I'd seen the movie when I was in like high school, and I didn't remember it very well at this point. So I said, "Oh, I'm gonna just order the book and read the book, and then watch the movie after." So I started shut down last year. I finally read through the book. and loved it. I was really blown away by it, how well it aged to today's themes, especially reading it in the middle of 2020. There's a lot of stuff that was pretty shocking to read, and then you watch the book. Or, I mean, you watch the movie, and I think in some points it misses the mark on the adaptation, but I think overall it hits really well. And I think what hits the most is that it actually does try and capture the themes and capture like the tone of the original book. Whereas as much as I love the Watchmen movie, I love watching it and I love the way it looks and I love the way it sounds and feels to watch it. I think it misses the mark on capturing the theme of Watchmen, like what Watchmen's actually supposed to be about. And like
Yep.
I think V for Vendetta, while it might not stand on a pedestal for me as much as Watchmen does, is one that I go back and watch a lot and think about a lot. It's one that I think captures the original novel a bit better in terms of the themes and what it was trying to say. And it's definitely ahead of its time. I think if you made something like this now, you could turn it into a really, really great like HBO miniseries type thing, or it could be a terrible like another terrible DC adaptation that Warner Brothers would make. And that's coming from a fan of most of their DC stuff. This would not work at all from like the current Warner Brothers DC movie team. But I think it's ahead of its time in the way that it's capturing ideas through a comic book lens in the movie in a way that like the Watchmen TV show I think did really well. And I think it's a way that things are kind of coming around to now. Like The Boys is trying to do that in a really interesting way. And this could be something that would have been done well now, but I think it was stuck in that weird time where it came out ahead of its time and not and wasn't quite received well, but would have been received great if it came out now.
I will say this before we move on. I hate the Watchmen show. I think that's a show that was written by people that have a complete misunderstanding of the source material. And I think that just like the real life, like hackers and people that use the Guy Fawkes masks in terms of like not understanding the source material, that's the same thing I got from the Watchmen show. I think this is a great adaptation of Alan Moore in terms of just like they changed some things that maybe needed to be changed. But I think overall it makes for a great film. And I think this is something that when you have a psycho but great writer of something, like just do what he did and maybe change some things that might not adapt to screen. Like I get they did that in Watchmen with the ending of changing it to a bomb. I actually like that better than the big octopus. And with this, like changing Natalie Portman's character a little and doing some things that they changed. I think it's a good adaptation, and I think while not as good as the graphic novel, you got the best version you could. But also, fuck the Watchmen show. Tristan said he liked it, and I just have to say that show is maybe the worst thing I've ever watched, and is very bad.
I liked it too. I'll say that. But I will say
it.
the best Alan Moore adaptation still League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Great film. Everyone should watch it.
I mean, I love Sean Connery, but
Yeah.
No, that movie's fucking
Oh, man.
sucks. So
yeah.
Is that the
All
one where
right.
Batgirl has sex with Batman in it?
yeah, that one too.
Also that. Yeah, people are very bad at adapting his work, so I feel like this one is like the one
this
thing
only,
that I like that
great one?
ever was adapted from Alan Moore. Yeah. I mean, people like Watchmen, but I, as a huge fan of Watchmen, that's my favorite graphic novel of all time. I think that movie just doesn't understand it at all, and just Zack Snyder is a lazy filmmaker in general. But yeah, I think this is probably the best you could say that ever came out of, like, movie wise, what came out of Alan Moore.
Before Tristan
always
has a
have to take
hernia over
shots.
there, we should
Yeah.
move on.
All right. Well, I
I'm just
have
triggering Tristan.
all I know is
I can feel that from here.
I have another deep, politically driven movie with some great themes. I have the comedy We're the Millers.
Class.
for
I
W.
love it.
But honestly, this movie just surprised the hell out of me how much I found it entertaining, because I didn't see it in theaters. I thought it looked like a really forgettable comedy. It's directed and written by the same guy that did Dodgeball, and he hasn't really done like a ton of great things, but I think that he hit with that, and I think he hit with this. The reason I really it came to mind and I put it on the list is because everyone is talking about Jason Sudeikis lately with Ted Lasso. And this movie, I think, shows like a little bit earlier on that he could kind of lead something like that and be really loved. Because I I was hit or miss with him in a lot of movies and things before this one. But I think the cast, so basically if you've never seen it, I mean it's on TV all the time and it's one of those movies that gets played on like TBS or TNT. But Jason Sudeikis is a drug dealer and gets hired to go bring drugs back from Mexico. But he needs a fake family to go do it, so he recruits a bunch of people from his like apartment complex and stuff. So Jennifer Aniston is a stripper who plays his wife. Emma Roberts is kind of like an outcast, kind of druggy girl that plays his daughter. Will Poulter is like this nerdy kid that plays his son. And then they meet Catherine Hahn and Nick Offerman as a couple on the way, and they're just great together. So I think just the cast of this movie makes it really fun to watch. Jason Sudeikis does a good job leading it, but Jennifer Aniston playing kind of a crude character like this, like she's done it maybe a couple times, but it's definitely a little bit more out of her wheelhouse, and I think she nails it because it plays against type. And I find that really entertaining. I'm a pretty big fan of Emma Roberts. She has not done a lot of great movies, but I've always liked her. And I've kind of followed, like, at least, you know, I've liked her in things, even if it's kind of a forgettable movie. So it's fun to see her not play kind of the blonde.
What is it? Scream 4?
Yeah, Scream 4. I thought Scream 4 was okay. Like that, you know, it was fine. But
I
liked her.
It was maybe the best Scream sequel.
Yeah, I didn't like it. And then Will Poulter, who's kind of become more of a star since then, it plays a really good nerdy character. But
no
again, yep. And then again, a big meme from this movie is the no regrets or regrets or whatever the fake
not
tattoo,
even one letter.
It's not even one letter, but
the haircut scene pops up a lot too that I see.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. But this was just it was a very surprising movie. It did what Game Night did to me. I think Game Night's better, but I went in with like no expectations, and like it's a really fun, entertaining comedy that I could put on whenever, and it's like a relatively family friendly.
Yeah, movie. I would say like if the kids in your family are teenagers, then I think it's a good family movie.
Exactly. Like I think you need movies like this just so that, you know, for entertainment and just like fun popcorn. You know, it's not a deep movie, but it's entertaining, and I get a kick out of it, and I'll watch it if it's on TV. Like I'll watch, you know, moments of it here and there, and then maybe put it on streaming. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere right now.
It's not.
It's been on streaming and back and forth.
Yeah,
but it's on TBS right now.
I guess on Stars.
Yeah, that's what I put in our notes. It's not streaming anywhere, but I'm sure if you go on TBS or Comedy Central right now, it's probably playing.
Exactly.
This is one where I've seen the trailer so many times that I feel like I've seen the length of the movie within the trailer. So I don't know. Maybe I'll see it, but it's like been ingrained into my mind. It's like one of those millions of mediocre comedies that comes out every year. But if you guys are saying it stands above stuff like Vacation and things like that, then it might be
it's
one
definitely better than the Vacation
better
remake.
than that. Yeah.
My thoughts on it are I've never seen the full movie. I've seen parts of it on cable when I had cable. It's okay, and I don't really care about it. Anything Ed Helms is in, I'm out. So him even
he's
just
not a huge part
slightly,
he's
he's in it briefly, and that is enough for me not to watch the full movie.
Yeah. He's the setup.
And I don't really, and I'm kind of with Bobby on hit or miss with Jason Sudeikis, but it's mostly miss. The only thing I've ever seen that I liked that he was in, and I won't even say I liked him in it, was Horrible Bosses. Everyone talks about Ted Lasso. I might watch it one day, but I don't think Jason Sudeikis is funny, and I don't think Ed Helms. I think Ed Helms is like the worst person in Hollywood as far as like someone I'd never watch on screen. So just knowing that both of them were in the movie, I've never watched the full thing, but I've seen parts of it on cable. I like Will Poulter. I like Emma Roberts. I like the rest of the cast. Nick Offerman's in it. Him and Catherine Hahn are funny in the scenes I've seen them in, but it's not a movie that I would ever like sit down start to finish and watch. It's just something that if you want to throw something on in the background on, sure. I
think it's worth watching through one time.
I feel like with Dodgeball, that is a memeable movie that like you could actually sit down and watch all the way through and enjoy. I feel like this is a memeable movie where the only things that you've seen from it are the good parts, and then you don't need to see the rest of it. But I've
Honestly,
also never seen it.
So what I would say with this movie, it doesn't always make you laugh out loud, but it rarely like completely misses a joke. Like nothing happens that you're like, that was just bad. It's like it is entertaining and will keep you like, it's not gonna lose you in the movie at some point. Like you and it tells its story. It does a good job. It doesn't go off the rails. It has a couple good, like really big laugh out loud moments, and it has good characters. So that's what I would say. It's an entertaining.
So
movie.
I would say this is a perfect Netflix and chill movie.
Yeah.
There you go. Tinder audience. Throw this on in the background while you don't pay attention to it. I think that's probably the best that you can say about We're the Millers. But Bobby gave it a good recommendation, so maybe check it out if you like average comedies.
Yeah, this and Night and Day. It's ones that I know like they're very
Night
overlooked
and Day.
because people
Another
look at
one.
them as very mediocre movies, and I think in that vein, because a lot of people do enjoy these type of movies, these stand above a lot of the kind of just shit that come out. So I think that it's worth a watch for a lot of people. I'd say.
Yeah, it's good to know if I'm ever in a situation and someone's like, "Oh, I just really like comedies," someone who's not really into like watching stuff that I watch. It's like I could throw on More the Millers and maybe I won't like hate my experience or something,
Yeah.
If someone doesn't like what I
If
like.
if you have to work on an assignment on your laptop and you need something to throw on in the background, I feel like this is a good movie to do that.
That's fair.
Y'all are just
But
haters.
you cannot focus on it.
I like the movie a lot, but it's like it's not one I'm going to say is like, oh, this is amazing, you need to watch it. It's good. I like it. It's a fun movie that I think it's better than a lot of bad comedies that come out. So all right, that's all I need to say about that one. I think.
All right, and Tristan's ready for his big blockbuster, wide appeal.
It was
mass
rough
movie
to
that we all
find a
love.
movie. I mean, it was X, all right. So I had to dig. You got
Triple
X-Men.
X State of the
We've
Union.
talked about X-Men enough
X-Men,
in our lives, especially with all the Marvel stuff going on now. And it was Triple X, and I feel like I've got Vin Diesel injected to my body already from Fast 9. It's X-Files, and I barely can make it through the show because it gets so bad towards the end. I haven't watched the movies yet, so wasn't able to pick those. I was pretty desperate. So I went on the Criterion channel, the streaming platform, and just typed in X and started scrolling down until I found something and clicked on it and started watching, and it was called Xia Wu, I believe is how you pronounce it. It's Xiao Wu. And the English
if you can't find it, it's called The Pickpocket.
It's called The Pickpocket. They released it it's named after the main character's name, Xiao, but they re-released it as The Pickpocket, which is what it's also known as on Wikipedia. But the title listed is the X title, so I'm saying it counts. But for me, I was just literally looking for any movie that started with X, and I clicked on it, and I was like, oh, it's on Criterion, it has some good reviews on here, whatever, I'll play it. And then I watched it, and it turns out it was recommended by Scorsese. He really had a good time. He liked it a lot, and that's all I really know about it. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and you scroll down to like critical reception. It just says like Martin Scorsese liked this movie and is a fan of this director. That's pretty much all you get. But you can see it when you watch it. It follows the story of this 20-something pickpocket who's living on the streets of Hong Kong, and he gets a note telling him that one of his old friends who was a previous criminal worker of his, someone that was a pickpocket alongside him, is now getting married, and he's become like a rich businessman, is very successful in life, and left the crime world behind him and is getting married. And he didn't even invite Xiao to the wedding because he's totally like changed his life and moved on from crime. And it inspires him to have this kind of like crisis of looking back at his life and saying like, oh, why can I get out of this crime life? I told myself that there's no other way, but is there really a way? And he has this young woman who works as a prostitute that he doesn't like spend the night with her, but he walks the night with her. They kind of walk the streets together and bond and become friends. And it's sort of like a bonding movie between these two outcast characters on the streets of Hong Kong. I mentioned at the beginning Deadpix, and how Deadpix portrays Hong Kong in this slightly elevated style, but it captures like this varying ways of the lives of people of Hong Kong, and this I think captures that in a totally different way. It doesn't have any of the elevated style. It's like guerrilla style filmmaking almost. Like there's parts where the filmmaker just following them with the camera, and it's following them through the streets with the camera kind of thing, and very guerrilla style stuff that I think Scorsese would attach to, and very much focused on the crime world. So I understand why Scorsese would like that. And if you have the Criterion channel and you want to check it out, I think it's worth checking out. It's very much a film school kind of movie, so it's slow. It's not going to grab you out of the action, but if you want to look at the life of these two people living on the streets of Hong Kong, I think it's worth checking out. And if you're a Scorsese fan, you want to see something that kind of inspired him, I think it's worth checking out for that too.
All right. Well, if you watched earlier in the show, I said the only steel book I own is Space Jam, so I'll let you make a decision on whether or not I have the Criterion channel.
I'll say this. I think this is a good film. As probably the only person who's checked this out. It was a '90s foreign film about a pickpocket, like Tristan said. So I don't know. It's a good movie. It was not something that like I ever thought about until Tristan put it on this list. I saw it as pickpocket, so I had to look it up, and then I was like, oh shit, I've seen this before. But it's a good movie. You have to be into foreign films to like this. But it's a good movie. The director made some good work after this, like Platform, which is a good movie. He likes to go into some similar themes as this movie, but it's a movie about there's a crackdown on crime, and if your crime is your life, like what do you do with it? And I think it has some good themes and some and a good tone, and I think it's just a movie that if you like foreign films, check it out. If you don't like foreign films, you're never gonna watch this movie or find this movie. But it's on HBO. It's a Criterion movie for a reason. That's pretty much a good standard. If you want to watch good movies, watch anything that is certified under Criterion. And this movie stands by that. I think it's good. Yeah, and like Tristan said, obviously Scorsese's been making films for a long time. This movie came out in the '90s, but was still sorry an inspiration to him. So I think it's if you like foreign films, check it out. It's good. It's worth watching. I watched this when I was really into foreign films, and I went on like 2 or 3 months of only watching foreign films, and I watched this. So it kind of gets lost in some of the other movies I've checked out at that time, but I remember enjoying it. I thought it was pretty good.
All right. Anybody else got anything to say about Pickpocket?
I didn't even know what this movie was. I was just like, well, I guess this is Tristan's pick for X. I got too much shit to watch right now to watch other people's picks.
Now that you say it's Pickpocket, I've at least heard it because of the influence. But no, I've never seen it. But maybe I'll check it out. But this one is probably one I won't get to. But I mean, it sounds good though.
Yeah, if you're into the filmic kind of stuff, if you want something that you would literally probably watch at a film school, this is what they sell Criterion as being film school in a box, and this is definitely film school in a box. So if you're wanting to break out into Criterion, this might not even be the best one to start with, but if you're into Criterion a little bit and you're trying to be like, okay, I've wet my toes, I've gotten a couple of stuff out of the way, but I'm trying to see what I can watch. A little bit of a deeper cut. This might be worth checking out. Not one that's going to change the way you look at film or anything, but it's a very compelling work from this director. And the Platform I thought was really good as well. So still a director that works today.
Joe and Tristan, quick question before we move on. Do you guys remember the movie I assigned to you that was a foreign film from the '90s that was it was about like a three-way relationship?
That was me and
had a bunch of drama. It was Bobby and Tristan?
I don't
remember the name of the movie now, and I've seen it, but I watched this at the same time, and I think that movie was a little better. But I don't remember what it was called now. But it had an awesome title.
It was something to drag or it had a really good title, and I'm trying to remember it, but I'd have to.
Brawl in Cell Block 99.
Watch old episodes. Nope, not that.
Star Wars Episode 7. Force Awakens.
No. I do not remember what it was called, but yeah, it's about basically a dude who breaks a bike, and then he's in a relationship with a girl who's in a relationship with another guy, and it's a whole thing, and it's very good. And you guys pitched decent movies on it, but I don't remember the name of it. So if I could remember the title, I'd recommend that, but I can't. So let's move on to
Neon Gods. There was something about Neon Gods.
Neon, yeah, it was
something of the Neon God. It was
Rebel of the Neon Gods.
Rebel of the Neon Gods. That's what it was.
Great movie, similar to this in terms of like a '90s foreign film that has a similar tone. Check out Rebels of the Neon God over this, I think, as far as movies I've seen, but this is also a very good movie.
All right, so I think that is now my turn, and I have Y, and for my last pick for Y, I chose Young Frankenstein, classic Mel Brooks movie, maybe the best Mel Brooks movie. I mean, there's arguments to be made for other ones, but I think this is my favorite. Classic
Mine's
Gene.
Eraserhead. Or I mean, Elephant Man.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah. Gene Wilder, great Gene Wilder performance. Just I feel like a lot of people have seen this. Most people have seen this, but if you're younger and you haven't seen this, you should definitely check it out. Yeah, it's black and white, but it's supposed to be like a period piece, and it was still a later made movie. It was made in the, I believe, maybe the late 70s
I think
or the
mid
80s.
70s.
I'm not 100% sure, and I never looked it up, but. Good, kind of just a satire of the original novel. A lot of like book professors say it's actually the closest movie to the original book because of the most of the movies only really cover the first half of the book, where this covers both. You have a great early performance by Gene Hackman as the blind guy, which is great. But yeah, it's just a really fun.
Do you know why Gene Hackman was in this movie?
I think you told me at one point, but I forget.
So Gene Hackman, I want to say, was a tennis partner with Mel Brooks at the time, and he heard about this movie and was like, "I need to be in this. I want to try comedy. I've never done comedy." So then Mel Brooks brought him on to do like literally like 4 days or 3 days or like basically a few days of shooting, and he filmed that role. And that's why Gene Hackman's in it, literally because Gene Hackman was having a conversation about this movie with Mel Brooks, and he was like, "I need to be in this." So I think that's always a great story about young Frankenstein, and just both of those people in general. Because just hearing about what it was, Gene Hackman obviously is a smart dude, and knew that this would be a hit, and it was.
Yeah. You also have Peter Boyle as the monster who would go on to be the grandpa in Everybody Loves Raymond. And he was in a number of movies and other things as well. But
yeah, I mean, there's not, you can't say enough about this movie. I think it's a classic.
Yeah, it's
and
just
if
a
you haven't
fun,
seen it, yeah,
typical like Mel Brooks movie, but just about Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
It's his best work. This is his masterpiece. I think Mel Brooks has done a lot of good movies. You can argue Blazing Saddles. You can argue Spaceballs, but your argument would be flawed. Yeah. And even like High Anxiety. I like a lot of Mel Brooks movies, like The Producers and stuff, but this is his best, and I think it's so fucking good. Young Frankenstein is one I turn on. Like, it's not really a cable movie, but it's a movie that if it came on, I would watch it at any point forward. I think it's so good. And Putting on the Ritz, it's, just such a good song because of this movie. Like, that's the reason that song sticks out to me, because of the finale. I think it's one of the greatest comedies ever made. I think it's probably a top 10.
For sure.
Yeah, this is a classic for a reason. I mean, it stands the test of time. A lot of comedies, I think it's hard to age well because a lot of it can rely on current, like, pop culture ideas of humor and current references and things like that. But this is one where it really does age well, and there's a couple of things that might not age well, but I mean, you still get the joke, you still laugh at it, you still go along with it. It doesn't completely whiff, and most of it does really age well. And I think this is also a really good example of how you can do parody and satire still of a genre, and it doesn't have to be like Scary Movie. It doesn't have to be just really terrible, like, direct parodies of things that are just like, here's a reference to something and here's a reference to something. Like, you can do it and actually be really funny and actually stand the test of time, and decades later still be watchable and still be entertaining. And yeah, Mel Brooks, I mean, genius. He did so much stuff, and we mentioned him at the beginning on Elephant Man, and whether it's on comedy here or Elephant Man there, like, he was involved in a lot of stuff, and I think he is overlooked often as one of like the all-time greats in terms of directors and filmmakers. So I definitely think if you haven't seen Young Frankenstein, check it out. But if you haven't seen a lot of Elvin Mel Brooks stuff, I definitely think dive into more than just this, or more than just like the one or two you might have seen.
Yeah, one of his most underrated movies is Robin Hood Men in Tights. Is such an underrated
I love
comedy. That movie is amazing. Carrie Elwes is great, but yeah, I think just in general, yeah, this movie is something that everybody needs to see. It's one of the greatest comedies ever. It has so many funny moments and just tells a complete story. Like Tristan said, like, it doesn't have. It's not just full of pop culture references like the Scary Movies are. That this movie parodies something that was before most people's time and still stands the test of time. Like, that is not easy to do, and I think it shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah,
it's very much like Airplane. I think it's similar in that fact, but it's not like joke after joke after joke. It has more of a plot, but I think it's just so well done. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I have a Mel Brooks collection which has various Mel Brooks movies, and the cover of Young Frankenstein at the
Same.
top it says the funniest movie of all time. Yeah, we have the same
As,
thing.
And you could,
yeah, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you could make that argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blazing
You could.
Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World Part 1, Robin Hood Men in Tights, Silent Movie, The 12 Chairs to Be or Not to Be, and Young Frankenstein.
The silent movie when the secretary or whoever this woman comes in and then the whole table lifts up because of the guys. Like maybe that doesn't hold up super well, but that's such a fucking funny joke. Like at the time, like Mel Brooks is great. Check out Mel Brooks's work if you haven't seen it. He is a great filmmaker. And watch the producers because I feel like that's something that isn't talked about because it's not a parody that he did. But it's just a good comedy movie, and anything Gene Wilder in is good.
And The Fly, he was similar to Elephant Man. He was vital in making The Fly happen. So if you like The Fly, you owe that to Mel Brooks.
The Goldblum version.
Yeah.
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 All right. I think
All
that
right.
brings us to Z, which is Johnny's pick, but he's back.
Nope, he's here.
I'm back. I'm here. Yeah, Z. I was looking for a Z movie. I was going to watch the new movie Zola, but I just didn't get around to it. So I chose one of my favorite movies of the 2000s, Zodiac. David Fincher's best work, in my opinion. I think it's his best film, and he's a great filmmaker. I love a lot of his movies, but I think just overall, this is his strongest film. Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr. obviously great in it, but it is based on real events, but is a fictional tale of how these things could have gone, basically. And it's a great thriller. It's a great drama. It's just everything you need in a movie. I think this really has. Obviously, it doesn't have like comedy or anything like that, but I think overall, if you're looking for a good, like kind of mystery murder type movie, watch Zodiac. That movie is incredible. It holds up to this day. One of the greatest filmmakers that we've seen, David Fincher. This is his masterpiece. I think I really like Gone Girl. I really like. I enjoy Fight Club a lot, but like nothing he's ever made has compared to Zodiac in those terms. So I don't know. There's not a ton to say about this other than it's a great movie, but I'm interested to see maybe if you guys are as high on it as I am, where maybe you rank this. I think the most interesting question is where you guys rank this as a David Fincher film, because to me, it is the clear number one. But I think maybe because of its dark tone and its length, maybe it's not as rewatchable as some of his other movies. So I'm interested to see if that affects your guys' rank of David Fincher films. So I'll start with, we'll just go around the horn and go with Bobby, but where do you rank this?
So for me, I came to this one a little later on, but I think it's really great, but it's not in my top 3 or so. I don't know exactly where it is for my Fincher films, but I like Seven, Gone Girl, at least those two better. And then I still really like The Social Network, and I think this is in the same ballpark as Social Network.
Bad movie.
But I think this is better than that. But I would say it's down in like the 3 or 4 range, but it's great. I think it is a little too long, and because of the nature of the story of the Zodiac Killer, there's not really like this is basically just it's a character piece on these. I'm getting obsessed with the case, so there's no really big resolution to the actual crime. So that takes it down, I think, just slightly as a pure like entertainment for watching a movie, but amazing performances, a great character study on both Jake Gyllenhaal's character and Robert Downey Jr.'s, but of just obsession with it. Really good job of Fincher just showing tension and changing up kind of how he showed the kills each time for the Zodiac Killer, every time that he put that on screen. But really good. Not in my top few, but I mean, I'm a big fan of Fincher, so it's still like one of my favorite crime thrillers. And it's cool to see Robert Downey Jr. a year before Iron Man kind of get another great role that people didn't really see maybe until after the fact, until he was Iron Man. But yeah, really good movie.
You heard it here first. Bobby thinks Alien 3 is a better movie than Zodiac. Tristan, what do you think about Zodiac, and where do you rank it among Fincher's films?
Yeah, Fincher for me, along with this film especially, was fundamental in like making me look at movies differently and like really look at movies as like a thing that people make, you know. And I never really looked at movies like that until I watched like stuff like Zodiac and stuff like Fight Club and started thinking like, oh, someone like in a form of craft put this there for a reason and like cut this part there for a reason, and like it was really kind of one that made me look at things differently. I think the scene that stands out for everyone is the basement scene with Jake Gyllenhaal when he's confronting someone he thinks is a suspect, and he has this piece of evidence that the Zodiac killer has a basement, which is not a normal thing in San Francisco, and this guy he thinks is he kind of becomes suspicious of is just like this random guy essentially, and he's says, "Oh, I have a basement," and kind of you realize in that moment like you're scared as the character is scared, not and you know for a fact like not this guy could be the Zodiac killer, but you know that this guy's probably not the killer that our character gets away. You know, knowing history what happens, but yet in the moment you're still scared. And I think that scene is what was kind of like a really life changing scene for me, where I was like, okay, how did we as the audience see past what we know to be true to be invested in this moment right here and feel it like we would feel it if we were that character. And that was just a really really great scene. And yeah, Fincher mentioned this, like this was his first movie he shot on digital rather than film, and he was like, yeah, I was like one of those people who was like, oh, I'm always going to shoot on film, I'm never going to be one of those new age digital people. And then as soon as he shot this, he was like, I'm never going back, it's too easy, it's too fast, it's too convenient. And it was hard for Robert Downey Jr. to turn that performance around, because he was like, shooting on digital is so much faster than film. It's like I don't have a second to like recoup and restart. It's like, okay, take one, go again, go again, go again. And that was an adjustment for him too, and he said he had a hard time on set doing that. So it's a fascinating movie to look at behind the scenes, a really great movie to watch. It's long, which is I think something that holds it back, and it's very cold and very dark, but up at the top for me for Fincher. I probably put Gone Girl above it for me, but this is at least in my top 3.
Joe?
All right, yeah, for me, as a big Citizen Kane lover, I'd have to put Mank as my number one Fincher film. Just Mank's so good. No, Mank fucking sucked ass. I hated
First
that
of all,
movie.
Citizen Kane, bad movie.
Oh
Okay,
boy.
we're not getting into this.
I'm not
Bad
getting into
movie?
that argument. I will just say Mank sucked. No, I haven't seen Zodiac in a while, so I don't really remember it that well. But just from what I remember, I feel like Seven and Zodiac are my top 2. Which is number 1? I'd have to rewatch them both to be able to make that distinction. But it's definitely in my top 2 with Seven. But I just remember really liking it. I like the ensemble cast of it all, and yeah, I think it's just a really really good movie. I will say great.
All
It's a
right.
great movie.
It's my favorite Fincher film, and he's one of my favorite directors. I do love Gone Girl. I love Seven. Um, you know, it's like the only Kevin Spacey movie that's rewatchable because he plays a terrible person in the movie, so you can watch it. But like,
And he doesn't
you
really
know,
show up until the last like 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
and he just kind of shows up. But also another good John C. McGinley role, as we talked about in Office Space. He's in the helicopter when they're looking for him. But yeah, I just think Zodiac is a masterpiece that not enough people recognize as that. So I really wanted to kind of bring attention to that. And I think, I mean, I want to complete my list. On Letterboxd, I'm working on my top 100 films of the 2000s. The Zodiac will be in my top 10, I believe. So I wanted to give it a shout out. I think Zodiac is incredible. I think it's one of the best directors that is currently working, despite Mank. It's my favorite film of his, but I think it's a top 3 for most people. And I just wanted to shout out Zodiac, and I think that completes our A to Z.
no, we still got 2 left.
No, we're. I think we're gonna.
I think we
just the
can
time.
finish.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. We're not gonna get to the last 2 because we're trying to aim for under 2 hours, and we're at like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So, yeah, we're just
Not
gonna.
gonna happen.
Yeah, we're just gonna wrap it up.
Want to just say what we had, and I mean,
Yeah.
people generally know. So I picked we went to do to finish it out by movies that started with numbers for our last 2 to try to get everyone even. And I went with 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I think is like an underrated.
Never seen it.
You know, I think you would actually really like it, Johnny. The ending is.
I think so.
going
I've
to-
just never watched it.
the ending's gonna get people to go one way or the other on that. I liked it. Some people won't, but the rest of the movie's great.
I
Yeah.
can't stand J.J. Abrams, so like that holds me back on what checking it out.
He didn't direct it though.
He was involved.
Oh yeah, any of those.
That's enough for me to not watch it.
Yeah, I love 10 Cloverfield Lane. I love the ending, and I'll say my last pick, I wanted to round it out with like a good hearty classic one that I think is like a must-watch for people, and it's 12 Angry Men. It's if you haven't seen it, of course, the premise is that there's jurors who have to make a decision on a murder trial, and a lot of them are very convinced of a guilty verdict, but one of them is convinced that there's more to the case, and he kind of makes his case to these jurors throughout the 90-minute runtime of why this guy might be innocent. And you spend the entire time in this one courtroom, or in this one room with these jurors. So it's a very contained story. I think that's fascinating, and I think it's one of the best movies ever made. You mentioned Wizard of Oz is like the movie I would show as my first movie ever, and I think this would be like, okay, movie number 2. Like, what's a low scale movie? What can you do with like a low budget drama? It's the most you can.
Yeah, this is a movie that I was introduced to in elementary school when our teachers made us watch it, and I feel like most of the movies that your teachers make you watch in elementary school, it's like, why am I watching this? But I was completely enthralled and I loved it, and ever since then I've watched it over and over again. I think it's a top 10 film ever made, and I do enjoy just reading articles that are like, basically I read an article once that was how does a movie change if a character is wrong? And it was, what if the juror who says he's innocent was wrong in 12 Angry Men? And it made a good argument for it, and it was a very interesting article to read. I don't remember much else about it, but I'm sure you can find it on Google if you Google it. But it's a movie that you can read constantly about. It's a movie that you can watch and enjoy endlessly. But I don't think there's a ton to say about it other than that it's maybe one of the top 10 films ever made. I think that's a reasonable take for 12 Angry Men. Just absolutely fantastic.
I agree with all of that.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to add about anything of our A to Z show? Any movie that they want to check out now that someone else pitched or brought up?
Pig.
You guys, I'll check out Pig. I've heard that one's good.
Yeah, I definitely want to check out Till Death and Hail Satan. They definitely stuck out. Both of them Tristan picked. So
good.
You're welcome, Joe.
Well, I've seen all of Bobby's picks, so that didn't really.
Yeah.
Except Godzilla, I haven't watched Godzilla, but
I'm definitely gonna check out Quick Change. It was a Joe recommendation, and I think Joe sold me on that one as this absurd movie that it might be.
I was gonna say the movie that I have not seen that I want to check out is Quick Change. The other one that I have not seen, I don't know, it's tough because I've seen a lot of these. I will check out Till Death. I don't care about Where the Millers, but I might give a rewatch to like Lady Snowblood. I haven't seen that in years, so like Tristan bringing that up, I'll probably give that a rewatch. I think that's worth a watch again.
At some point in my life, I will see We're the Millers. I feel like it's just a statement of fact. It'll be there someday.
It'll be on someday.
Someday.
all right. Bobby,
It'll be on. Same with Night and Day.
Yeah. Mine was, I mean, I definitely already wanted to see Pig, but just hearing you guys talk about it, like I definitely really want to see that. And then
Incredible.
Quick Change, just like Tristan said, because it just sounds crazy and like a fun, weird movie to watch that I've never heard of. So I'll give that a shot.
Yeah.
I'll check out I Saw the Devil. Never heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. I will say, as far as that wraps up our discussion on A to Z. I think Tristan and I are doing our Disney Plus weekly review tomorrow, which I don't know what we're gonna review. There's What If. That's about it.
What if
And
what if we can review something? We'll see.
Yeah. Next week.
What if was good though?
Next week we're having a new show idea where we're drafting various movies in different categories. It's fantasy football draft season, so that should be fun. I have no idea what we're gonna do because I haven't put any thought into what my draft board will look like. I
put my draft board together, baby. I'm working on it every day. I'm gonna fucking crush you guys.
And then I'm
taking Dalvin Cook. Oh wait, sorry.
We'll have more discussion on that next
champion
next week. Yeah, and then the week after that, we start James Bond month. We're gonna do a James Bond Mount Rushmore, probably a James Bond top 10.
The best month.
We'll just have like a James Bond discussion show with a wheel where we spin a wheel and whatever lands on, that's what we're gonna talk about. And then it's gonna culminate in a battle between me and Tristan, who basically before this started hadn't really seen a James Bond movie. I think had only seen Doctor No at that point. I don't know what Tristan has seen, and by that point in time, I will have binged through every single James Bond movie. So
Oh yeah.
that wraps
I'm so
everything
excited
up.
for that.
All right, everyone, have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your night, week, day, whatever you're doing.